I won out. Wow. Don't even have a focused camera. I'm beating Timcast out. Thank you, Roman. Welcome to Normal Merrick Show, host robnoerr. Great to see you this evening. Running a little late tonight. That's okay. Had a late night last night. Was on the Crucible call till like 6 a.m. Had to be up at 7 for work. Good stuff, Rob. Brilliance. So instead of my normal water, I do have a little diet soda here this evening. A little caffeine bump to do the show tonight, but I'll be okay. I'm not 40 yet, damn it. Still just 39. A young man. It's kind of weird, though. I think am I the same age as Vivek? Is he 39? That was like one of my selling points when I ran for Congress there like 4 years ago. You're a young guy. Not so much anymore. Tim's getting annoying, too. We can talk about it. We can talk about annoying people. Influencers. I don't mind that. The truth be told, everyone annoys me. I annoy myself. My son and my wife don't annoy me. That's about it. I can't say my wife annoys the piss out of me sometimes. She's still the best. I called to do a video call with her and my son here before I started. He's like in a phase where he's climbing. He treats everyone like a jungle gym. He's climbing up them, hands around the neck, flipping over top of them. This is hilarious stuff. But yeah, we'll just riff tonight. We'll talk about whatever people want. Like I said, I was on with the Crucibles crew, chatting until about 6 a.m. last night, just talking about random stuff. Maybe we'll rehash some of that. So Aftershock, who was there, might find this boring. But that's okay. If I did a show that was just things that Aftershock wanted, it would probably just be cursing out lefties at the top of my lungs the whole time. So, which would actually probably be a more entertaining show. Maybe that's what I should go with. Yeah, that's true. Aftershock did kick my ass. Not just verbally. He literally showed up and beat the shit out of me. I'm actually wearing covering right now so you can't see the bruises on my face. I don't know. Aftershock looks scrappy. He probably could kick my ass in a fight. I'm not much of a fighter. I was a reasonable wrestler in like elementary school, but I got asthma pretty bad. Doctors made me quit by the time I got to junior high because I had to forfeit 2 matches in a row because by the second period I was coughing up blood and they were like, I'm done with that. So the sport I could play was football. Now don't get me wrong, I think that there's a certain level of toughness to play football. That's true. There's a lot of physicality to it. But as far as like cardio and endurance, like you basically play a 5-second play and then have a 40-second downtime. Like I can't imagine with the asthma that how I was in high school that I would have been able to play basketball, like running up and down the court the whole time, or wrestling. Just brutal. Like wrestling really takes it out of you, But Omar congratulates me on Trump's win last night. Thank you. Trump was my third choice. I mean, I guess Haley not winning, which wasn't going to happen anyways, is worth congratulating me for. But yeah, I would have preferred to see Vivek win, followed by Ron DeSantis. If I'm totally honest, I knew it wouldn't happen, but Oh, here we go. Sparky. Challenge me to a weightless contest. How am I going to beat a guy that knows what words like anaerobic means? Get out of here with your mumbo jumbo. Sounds like progressive bullshit to me, Sparky. So, let's just jump in. So we'll talk about the caucus last night. So here's the deal. Most of my adult life, who the choice was of the Republican Party, in fact, my entire life, I just had no interest in. I remember in elementary school, the election with, what year would it have been? 96 with Perot. I was a big Perot fan. Even as a young man, I was populist. Rein this budget in like 6th grade or whatever. But I was not a Bob Dole fan or a George Bush fan. Thank you so much. Pentuple with the raid. Really appreciate it, man. Hope everything's going great. I was never a George W. Bush guy. I wasn't a John McCain guy. Certainly wasn't a Mitt Romney guy. I liked Ron Paul. That was my man. And he got cheated out in the primaries every year. They didn't give him a fair shake. So, Trump was the first person who won the nomination for any of the major political parties that I could support. Now, having said that, do I think Trump did a perfect job? No, I criticize him all the time. So much so that he was my third choice this time around. But he's still a choice I could accept, with all of his faults. He ain't Mitt Romney. He ain't Paul Ryan. He ain't John McCain. He ain't George W. Bush. He ain't Nikki Haley. So I could support that, even if he was my third choice. I think Vivek, the concern, I'm not going to rehash all my concerns with the three candidates, but, my concerns with Vivek is he authentic? I believe he's sold me on at least enough of a possibility that he is. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the messaging that he has with his policy prescriptions, getting rid of 70% of the federal workforce, securing the border, disbanding the FBI, my issues largely being corruption oriented, those are the exact things that I want to happen, that I think are necessary to happen to just start moving forward, to take back this country, to end this corruption. That certainly wouldn't be the end all be all. No matter how talented you are, you're not going to be able to accomplish that in one term, ending this corruption. It's going to take decades, but it's the right first step. So why did I support Trump? Well, again, if you're a single-issue voter like me on corruption, I knew that the mere fact that Trump was a perceived outsider would force the corrupt people to out themselves in an attempt to take him out, which is exactly what happened. And then I hoped that he would do something to significantly stop that corruption. He didn't. But the mere fact that he was a potential outsider, that he wasn't groomed from within the Republican Party or the Democratic Party to be a president like a Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney or Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton, etc., made him a potential outsider. I would have voted, even though I despise socialism, in 2016, if the election had been Jeb Bush versus Bernie Sanders, I would have voted for Bernie Sanders, because he at least struck me as a potential outsider. And even though I think the policies he would have initiated would have been garbage, he would have forced the hand, just like Trump did, of all of these people to come out of the woodwork and attack him, which normies would then see how corrupt the system was, how the media works in tandem with them. So I would have pinched my nose and voted for Bernie over Jeb Bush. So that's why I voted for Trump. So this time around, who would do the best against corruption? I think Vivek has not only the policy prescriptions, but the talent. Rarely, and this is going to sound very conceited, but I don't care. Everyone tends to think probably the ideas they have are the best ideas. That's why you have those ideas. So if you think, oh, this is what we should do on taxes, this is what we should do on border security, you're probably going to think the person that most aligns with you that's running is has the best idea. It's sort of the nature of the beast. If you're someone who likes debating or arguing, you're probably going to think the people that talk like you are doing the best job. So I get that. And I'm not saying I'm the end-all be-all. But I am going to say this. I think I'm pretty damn good. I'm a pretty good rhetorician. I think I was a damn good politician as far as the ways to speak to people. And rarely do I see a politician that I'm like, yeah, I think that guy's better than me. And I do think that about Vivek. I think if you listen to my shows at the beginning of campaign season, when I was recommending how Ron DeSantis should have ran his campaign, it sounds like exactly how Vivek has ran his campaign, except Vivek's been better than what I was saying. Now, in fairness, Vivek's had more time to prep and things like that. I was just coming up with stuff off the top of my head. But it's phenomenal. The way he treats a hostile media, phenomenal. The way he can even take hecklers and give them an opportunity to speak and then rebut it in a way that's not only forcible, but it's also polite enough that you could literally see some of the people that were heckling him saying, well, that guy's not bad, he has a point. And it's one of the things in politics that I think people don't understand. You should always try to avoid insulting any potential voter. Going after the media, going after your opponent politicians, all good, right? No problem. But the voters, you should sympathize with them. As me and you, so I, EOD's on here, Sparky's on here, Aftershock, a bunch of other people, Ogre, a bunch of other people, Computer Carnage, right? People I know, right? We could sit here and be like, what the hell are these stupid ass millennials doing? Man, they're a bunch of idiots. They vote like a bunch of morons. Like, we could say that. But if I'm running for office, I wouldn't say that. And I don't say that anyways, most of the time on my show. I told this story when I ran in the special election in 2019. The politician that was on everyone's mind there that was new was AOC. And so I'm going to all these Republican conventions trying to talk to people to vote for me, and they're all like, oh, those stupid young people voting for AOC and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, yeah, you shouldn't say that. And they're like, why? And I was like, well, did you like it when Hillary called you a deplorable? And they were like, no. And I was like, right. So why would those young people ever vote for you if you start off the conversation calling them stupid? But AOC's terrible. I agree. So then what would you say to them? I was like, I would say something like this. I understand the appeal of voting for someone like AOC. As a young person, you probably feel like this country's thrown you overboard and doesn't care about you. And so you want someone that's seen as an outsider that's different because you think they'll have a chance of actually being concerned about your issues as opposed to the same old that the Republican and Democratic parties have offered. So I totally get why you would take a chance on voting for someone like AOC. I personally think her policies are terrible and they're actually going to make young people's lives worse off. But I sympathize with trying to go outside the normal bounds of elections and try to vote for someone that you think would be different. Here's why I think my plans would actually be better for you and the people in your community that you care about. See? You still insult AOC, still say you don't think she's good, but you don't talk down to the voter. I think Vivek does that masterfully. I really do. And the other thing is, Vivek, to me, looks like he's having fun. He looks like he likes it. He likes doing the campaign. And trust me, it's a slog, man. I did a campaign. I did that special election. If I'm just ballparking it, in the 1 month that I campaigned hard, I probably did 1/1000th of what Vivek's done. Vivek, God damn it, I pronounced his name. So, I mean, it drained on me. Now, granted, I still had a full-time job, but it's work, man. So that's who I wanted to win. I knew the chance was a long haul. He finishes at what, 7.7%? I didn't check the final tally, but 95% in, he was at 7.7%. So around there, between 7.5% and 8%. I think that's actually a phenomenal finish for him. A young guy who isn't a politician, he doesn't have a background of he was governor or he was senator. Basically came out of the woodwork with no name recognition. It wasn't like Donald Trump where it's well, people knew Trump before he ran. There's just some guy with a weird sounding name comes out of nowhere. And at the Iowa caucus, basically promoting a MAGA message, he still gets damn near 8%. When most people that like Vivek probably like Trump too. So it's a hard sell. And I don't think Vivek, as we talked about in here before, I don't think he ever stood a chance. I think he knew what he was doing. He was setting himself up potentially to be the runner-up, but mostly to set himself up for the future. To possibly have a position in Trump's cabinet, or to set himself up in 2028, or if he wants to run for a state office in 2026. And he did so phenomenally. But who was your candidate, Sparky? Was it Vivek? Is that who you were rooting for as well, man? I bet, because Sparky's smart, like me. So I bet that was his candidate. So that was that. DeSantis, I still, if you had to press me, and I could snap my finger and pick my candidate, and Vivek would say, I'm not running, I would say I would prefer DeSantis over Trump. I think the ideal situation would be if the three got together and Trump decided to drop out, focus on his legal cases, and be sort of the kingmaker. Be the guy that was sort of like a media mogul, the guy that's still out there doing press conferences, and then have a ticket that includes DeSantis and Vivek. Probably because DeSantis is more established and he would be the president. Vivek would vice president, attorney general, press secretary, whatever. Something to that effect. I think that sort of coalition would have been what I would have sought the most. Because I'm not so sure Trump gets it yet. about the corruption that he faces. I'm not sure that he gets that. But as far as I'm concerned, DeSantis had a disappointing night. And I know there's a lot of copium out there, so we're going to talk about it. So I'm not going to bury the lead any further. The primary's over for all intents and purposes. Now, nothing's ever over. Like, let's just for a second take, they're going to lock Trump up. Oh, they'll do something horrible to Trump, blah, blah, blah. Take that out of the equation. Like, Trump could be in a car wreck tomorrow. Could happen. Trump could have a health scare. He could have a stroke. He's an older man. So anything could happen in that sense, where Trump might have a health issue and say, hey, I have to drop out. I have to handle the... Obviously, then it's not over. I get that. And then, of course, there's the corruption aspect of it where they could, Supreme Court theoretically, I don't think this will happen, but they could uphold this Colorado case, and you could see a rash of Democrats in states all across the country saying Trump can't be on the ballot. He could go to jail, which might prompt him to not run. I doubt, though. But aside from all that, it's effectively over. In fact, everyone was making fun of Nikki Haley for saying that it's a two-person race. So if you missed it, Nikki Haley said that last night. She came in third and said, Iowa shows that it's a two-person race. And the obvious joke is, right, so DeSantis versus Trump. You're not the top two. But she's actually right. Nikki Haley's actually right. Because DeSantis put all of his eggs in the Iowa basket. That was the strategy. And it was... I don't like the way he ran his campaign. I don't. But that part of the strategy I don't disagree with. Trump is the de facto incumbent. Right? And so that's a huge advantage in the primary, to be the de facto incumbent. And so one of the things that DeSantis is going to face is, how do you convince voters that are voting in states on Super Tuesday that you actually have a chance? More importantly, how do you convince donors? So you got to keep that money faucet flowing. If he comes really close to Trump in Iowa, or if he would have beat Trump in Iowa, all of a sudden the money faucet's on. All of a sudden a bunch of donors in the Republican class that hate Donald Trump are like, this is the guy. He could beat him. And so the strategy is, for better or worse, people could complain, why does Iowa get to be so important? Whatever, that's the way it's set up. The strategy was, we have to perform well in Iowa. That is key to everything else going forward. He didn't do it. He didn't do terrible. He didn't take third place. He didn't pull single digits. But he vastly underperformed what he needed to do. Now, there's a lot of cope. Oh, but the polls said Trump was going to win by 40 and he only won by 30. Okay, whatever. Look at how the ground game, and they kept bragging about this, DeSantis' ground game. And he did. He had a good ground game in Iowa, and he had a lot of enthusiasm for the people that were working for him. And he got trounced. He didn't even get half of what Trump got. He does not have that spending and ground game in New Hampshire, which is next Tuesday. He don't have it in South Carolina. Nikki's probably going to beat him in New Hampshire and South Carolina. And what that, in effect, will do is cause the Never Trump donor class in the Republicans to rally around Nikki Haley. Nikki's got so much money coming in from Democrats and globalists, and she did spend a lot of money in Iowa. But compared to the other candidates, she's way outspending someone like DeSantis in New Hampshire. Oh, there's certainly validity. It's not a conspiracy at all. It's admitted. Of course, it's an open primary. So's New Hampshire. Yeah. Democrats are registering as a Republican for a day and voting because they want Nikki Haley. Absolutely true. So, I don't know what DeSantis, other than DeSantis just being like, well, I want to try to take second place in case something happens to Trump. Now, here's something I don't know. And I asked a couple people this and no one responded to me. Maybe someone in the chat knows. What happens if Trump, we get through Super Tuesday, and let's make it as simple as possible. Let's say tomorrow everyone drops out. It's just Trump. Everyone's like, you know what? I don't have the money. It's clear Trump's going to win. Because it is clear Trump's going to win. So everyone, Nikki Haley drops out. DeSantis drops out. That's it. What happens then if something happens to Trump 2 months later? And he's not running then? Does it go to default the person that was in second place? Because this isn't, you have to understand, it's not a legal matter. Because a primary it's not like the law that's written into the Constitution that primaries have to go certain ways. Basically, it's just the rules of that state's particular Republican Party. Right, so basic guitar is basically right. So I think the party could basically say whatever the hell they wanted, right? They could be like, look, we're going to have a redo. It's going to all be one day. Everybody come out 3 Tuesdays from now and we're all going to vote for anyone who wants to run. Or they could just independently choose. So what would happen? Now that's scenario 1. How about scenario 2? How about scenario 2 is Nikki Haley stays in, but everyone else drops out. And Trump's killing it. And then all of a sudden he drops out with like 5 states left to vote. Now, even if Nikki Haley would have won all 5 of the remaining states, she wouldn't have came close to Trump. But she's the only one still in it. Is the party going to say, well, our rules say the last person standing wins. And even though Nikki Haley only got 5% of the vote nationwide, the guy that got 95% isn't there anymore, so we're giving it to Nikki Haley. Or would it be a situation where delegates would pick it at conventions? That makes a difference in the strategy moving forward. Because there is part of the strategy, it's like, well, if you're Ron DeSantis, you stick in for second place. Because maybe something bad happens to Trump. But let's say that happens, Ron DeSantis sticks in for second place, and then something bad happens to Trump, and he's not running. Would the delegates say, well, we don't give a shit that you're in second place. We're just going to pick for whatever criteria we say. You being in second place means nothing to us. That's probably most likely what would happen. So given that world, you could still say, yeah, but if you're still campaigning, then you're more likely to convince those delegates to go with you. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate that. I don't know. And again, Zygmun's there. Zeigman was a conferee in the special election that I ran in 2019. It wasn't a primary. It was a special election. So in a primary in Pennsylvania, you can only vote in the party that you're registered's primary. So if you're a Republican, you can only vote in the Republican primary. And the normal process is you go and you vote for all the people that are running, and there's a ballot, and you vote. If you're a Republican, you vote for the Republicans, and whoever wins, wins. And everyone who's registered as a Republican, barring some sort of criminal matter or something that you're not allowed to vote, you get to vote. The special election was not like that. There was a number of conferees that were picked. Each county, based on the percentage of the vote that went to the Republican in 2018 election, got a percentage of conferees. So maybe Lycoming County had 27 conferees, and, etc. Each county had a certain portion of conferees, and they're the only ones that got to vote. So when I was running, it wouldn't have done me really any good to go into a town and go to the local pizza shop and be like, hey everyone, I'm running for Congress. I'd like to tell you about my platform. People might have said, wow, you're great. Where do we vote? And I'd say, well, you don't get to vote. It's only these 212 people that get to vote, or how many there was. 223 maybe. Well, why was it like that? Because the Republicans get to pick and choose how they want to do it in that circumstance. It's up to them as an organization. Okay, the guy that was voted in is leaving. How do we want to choose who our nominee will be? And they can decide however the hell they want. It's not like the law is going to get involved. It's not like, the governor of Pennsylvania is like, you can't do that. I mean, basically what the Democrats did, they just picked the guy. The same guy that ran in 2018. As far as I'm aware, there wasn't a conferee process. They were just like, this is the guy. There. That's right, Tengo. That's what I'm getting at. The party can basically select whoever they want. They don't have to have primary. That's true. Nothing in the Constitution mentions political parties, primaries, anything of that nature. So it's not like, whoa, we're going to have a legal challenge. We're going to get the courts involved here. Now, theoretically, courts might get involved if there's an accusation that the bylaws of the Republican Party weren't followed. But it's not a legal matter. It's not a criminal matter. So, given that, the idea that, because if it's a general election, so let's say that the primary's done, and let's say that it's Donald Trump's in the general election, and Joe Biden, and RFK. Those are the three that are, on the ballot everywhere. And RFK is getting information dude, you're crushed. You're not even going to get 3%. But he says, yeah, but I'm not going to drop out anyways, because if Trump goes to jail or if Trump can't run for some reason, I'm the next man up. I might get a lot of those votes and have a chance. It wouldn't matter in a primary situation. Aftershock quotes, he says, this must be from the Republican, or answering my question. Typically, the party's, National Committee would meet to determine how to proceed. Some possibilities include selecting a new candidate through a vote, holding a special convention, or following the rules outlined in the party charter. Right. So, again, the idea of just sticking in to get second place, because if Trump falls out... Now, here's the thing. It would depend on what Vivek would do. But let's assume for a moment that Vivek would be like, I'm not interested, for whatever reason. DeSantis would definitely be the second choice. And, right? The average Republican that's voting, because Trump's getting, a huge swath, 50% in Iowa. Let's assume that he gets around that nationally. Those people aren't going to accept just the delegation being like, you know what, we're going to go with Chris Christie. They'd be infuriated. I mean, they could do that. The Republicans do that, but it would infuriate Republican voters. So their second choice, I think, overall would be Ron DeSantis. But does DeSantis have to stay in the race to make that happen? I don't think so. And if your argument is, no, I think it'd be Vivek, because if Trump had to drop out, he would endorse Vivek, which is probably true, well, then staying in the race ain't going to help DeSantis anyways. So I don't see a path forward for DeSantis. I just don't. I don't see, at this point, given all the time and energy and the strategy of putting all the eggs in the Iowa basket and getting blown out there, and he did. And I don't give a shit what any DeSantis influencer tells you. He got blown out. He did. I don't want to hear, well, the poll said he'd lose by 40 and he lost by 30. Now, he got blown out. Now, brief side note, a lot of, I made this post on Twitter last night. I thought it was funny. So you had DeSantis people for over a month were saying, when DeSantis wins Iowa, all the Trump people are going to say that it was rigged, it was cheating. Right? Then last night, the media, being shit that they are, called the election while people were still voting, which is ridiculous. Now listen, I get the idea of calling early. If their votes are done casting and you say we're going to call it early, that might be bad journalism. But I don't think it's unethical to the point where it's affecting the vote. Because literally if all the votes are cast, no one else could cast again. The minute that happens, if Fox News says we're calling it for Trump, it doesn't affect the vote. It's just bad journalism as far as I'm concerned. But they don't do it just based on, one of the mistakes people say, only 1% of the votes are in and they're calling it. Well, it's because they're basing it on entrance polls or exit polls. In the case of the caucus, it was only entrance polls. So they have an idea even before they announce. I assure you that Fox News and ABC and CBS were looking at the entrance polling, and hours before it was announced, we're like, yeah, Trump won. Unless the people are just lying on the polls. So they have a pretty good idea. And honestly, the entrance polls were remarkably accurate. So I looked right at the beginning of the night at the entrance polls, and it had Trump right around 50%, and it had DeSantis right around 20%, slightly edging out Haley, and that's basically how it broke down. But it was unethical for them to call the election while people were still voting. Now, does that mean, that cost DeSantis? First off, there ain't no shenanigans that propelled Trump 30 points. Like, the idea that maybe DeSantis won, but no, calling it early cost him. No. But that's not the point. It could make a complete difference to DeSantis if he would have got 10 points closer or 5 points closer. Instead of losing by 30, he lost by 25 or lost by 20. That could make a difference. The point is, it is unethical, and I am against the media manipulating stuff by jumping in, particularly while people are still voting. I was against it when it happened in 2020 in Arizona with Trump, and that was an election that was decided by like 10,000 votes, and they called it so early. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. However, there is a little schadenfreude and humor to both sides of this. The Trump people that are like, cry harder, DeSantis, that were the same people that rightfully were angered in 2020 when this shit happened to Trump. So when it happened to Trump, it was a big deal. It was election interference. But when it happens to DeSantis, it's, why don't you cry more? And then the DeSantis people that spent over a month telling us, Trump people won't accept the results. They'll say it was rigged. And now here they are saying, this is a farce. The lesson learned here is, most people don't give a shit about shenanigans like this unless it affects their guy. That's the truth. And that's true of Trump supporters and DeSantis supporters. That's just the way it is. It's the way it is. So to me, it was a little humorous watching both sides, as far as I'm concerned, make fools of themselves. I took the side of, listen, regardless of if it affected an out, maybe, and there's a solid argument, right? People are like, well, if you're a DeSantis voter and you're waiting in line and all of a sudden it pops up in your phone, Trump's already won, you might say, screw it, I'm going home. True. But you might say that if you're a Trump supporter too, right? If you're waiting in line to vote for Trump and it pops up and says, yeah, Trump won convincingly, you might say, cool, I'm not going to stay here in the cold anymore. I'm going to go to the bar, I'm going to go to the pizzeria, or I'm going to go home. So it's hard to say who it affected negatively more, but that's irrelevant to me. It's wrong. And it's wrong if I think it cost my guy, and it's wrong if I think it helped my guy. In both scenarios, it's wrong. And I don't mind people. I do agree that it gets annoying that there are certain... Do I think there were shenanigans in the 2020 election? Absolutely. But does that mean every election that your candidate ever loses, not just Trump, but any Republican or MAGA person you endorse, when they lose, it's because it was stolen? No. And there certainly is a lot of that. Now, I can't blame people for thinking that. Once you lose faith in the system, I understand. Why would you trust what they say in the future? I get that. But I'm just saying, sometimes, it gets a little overboard. Having said that, I don't begrudge people complaining about the way these systems are set up when they think their candidate's screwed over. I feel that way about Trump supporters. I feel that way about DeSantis supporters. Fuck, I feel that way about... What's her name? What's the name of the woman in Georgia that always claimed she won when she lost? Her supporters say, this system's rigged. They have the right to say that. So, I don't know. Just a little bit of hypocrisy I saw there from both sides. Anyways, transitioning back then. So, the point is, DeSantis is dead in the water. I don't know how he overcome... My guess is, someone tell me if they think I'm wrong. Stacey Abrams, right. Right, I agree, Sparky, yeah. I'll leave anyone in the audience tell me if they think I'm wrong about this. My guess is 90% of Vivek supporters go to Trump. But probably 98%, right? Anyone want to push back on that? I think not only because Vivek told them to, but because the candidate probably most affiliated with Vivek, if not him, would be Trump to the average Trump supporter. So if you factor that in, okay, now if Trump would have got his 7.5%, now Trump's almost at 60% of the vote in Iowa. That would mean even if there could be... Thank you so much, Gizmo, for the cheer. Even if there was some sort of bargain between DeSantis and Haley, one drop out and the others people endorse, I don't think it's enough to overcome. I just don't. And I truly believe, and I could be wrong, and again, I'm willing to leave people push back on this. I understand Vivek's position where he's saying ultimately the strategy is to force Ron out and then to make him Nikki's VP. I don't know that Vivek believes that. I think Vivek's saying that to prevent the possibility from happening. I think that's why Rand Paul's doing the never Nikki stuff. I think that's why Tucker came out and was like, never Nikki. I think they're trying to stop any consideration of Trump or DeSantis trying to align with her in any way whatsoever. And anyways, I'm getting to a wordy point. I don't think DeSantis would do it. Regardless if Vivek thinks that's true or not, I don't think he would. In my heart, I believe that DeSantis is malleable. I do think like everyone, and we're all malleable to a degree. No matter how principled you think you are, you could be swayed a little bit one direction or the other based on the people you're surrounding yourself with. But I truly believe that DeSantis does not like Nikki Haley or what she stands for. I truly believe that. I think that there's way more in common when you saw on that debate stage with Vivek. And did you notice like the last debate? Like when they would go to break, it's Vivek joking around with DeSantis and like Christie and Haley. That sounds about right. Well, Jet says his brother's a Vivek supporter and says he'll vote for Haley. It's got to be very rare. I don't see what the cross application of those two people are. You know, that'd be like saying like, you know, I'm a Biden supporter, but if he didn't run and it was Gavin Newsom instead, I'd write in Nick Fuentes. And like, okay, I guess. Oh, Roman, we'll talk about that as well. You're spot on. Yeah. It's Vivek? I thought it was Vivek. Anyways. So I don't see Ron DeSantis' path. And ironically, Nikki Haley's right that it does in effect, unless something I'm missing happens, it does in effect become a two-party race because Nikki didn't put all of her eggs in the Iowa basket. Nikki was in play in Iowa. She wanted to have a reasonable showing. Nikki, you know, don't get me wrong, Nikki didn't have a great night. She would have liked to have been second place and certainly wishes she was closer to Trump in Iowa. But all of her eggs weren't in the Iowa basket. If she would get blown out in New Hampshire, she would be in a similar position to DeSantis. But she's going to come way closer to Trump in New Hampshire than DeSantis came to Trump in Iowa. She may even beat Trump, though I doubt. But she'll be within percentage points. I think it'll be single digits. So I understand her point. As funny as it may sound, she says it's a two-person race now. You don't think she comes within 10 percentage or single-digit percentage? We'll see. Remember, it's an open primary. There'll be an awful lot of Democrats registering to vote. But that's my prediction. Now, here's the thing. Let's say that, hypothetically, Nikki Haley beats Trump in New Hampshire. Does that mean she's now the favorite? Of course not. She's putting so much attention and care into New Hampshire. Trump hasn't even really began. I mean, imagine Vivek now going out being a surrogate for Trump, putting in the energy in a state like South Carolina that he put it in Iowa for himself. You know, so I think, you know, as the incumbent, Trump rightfully is like, I'm going to stay pat. I think without doing anything, we're going to win almost every state. But if he has to come to the point where he's putting direct focus on specific states, I think he trounces anyone. That's the advantage of being the de facto incumbent. It's Trump's party. I had said all along, people could go back and see my prediction. I said over a 95% chance that the primary before one vote is wrapped up, Trump's won. But there's a chance. And I don't begrudge other people for running. I really don't. And I get, dip your toe in. Let's try real hard in Iowa and see what happens. It didn't happen. Thank you, Achilles, for the super chat. Says, yeah, Rob, I found it quite funny when they all started screaming foul last night. Here, my bearded buddy. Yeah, right? I saw all those posts on X for weeks. Oh my God, Trump's people won't accept it. And then the first thing they did was like, this is unfair. But that's it. I mean, Nikki Haley's running. She is the Democrat choice. She is running. I mean, Tucker and Vivek are completely right that she is running, hoping that Donald Trump gets removed, and then the donor class installs her as the Republican candidate against the wishes of the voters. That's it. That's her strategy moving forward. The secondary strategy is they're hoping that she does well enough to make Trump sweat so that Trump would be forced to make some sort of devil's bargain and say, like, listen, Haley, if you drop out and I point you to my cabinet or my VP slot, can you bring some of that sweet, sweet donor money? Because here's the truth. Regardless of what the polls say, regardless of how unpopular Joe Biden is, Democrats are sitting on a mountain of cash that the Republicans don't have for two reasons. One, because Trump has to spend a shitload of money fighting all these legal battles. And secondly, because the chair of the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, is absolute fucking garbage. She can't fundraise. She can't promote good candidates. She can't win races. She's horrible. So Trump's team's going to be desperate for money. And if Haley's making them sweat, they ain't going to think Haley's going to beat him straight up. But if she's making him sweat where he has to spend money and work, the hope would be from the establishment class that he has to reach out to Nikki Haley. And I will be as clear as possible. I will be... you could clip it, you could mark it. I will not vote for a Trump-Haley ticket. I'll vote third party. I'll write someone in. There is no chance I am voting for a ticket with Nikki Haley's name on it. End of story. And I hope that... Is Donald Trump listening to me? Of course not. Of course not. I'm small potatoes. But there are enough people saying this. Like Rand Paul. Like Tucker Carlson. I'm sure Vivek's telling him this. I hope that Trump says, it ain't worth it. The money... Because Trump might say, what do I care? I run the show. Who gives a shit who my VP is? I run the show. If Nikki Haley brings $200 million to my camp, fine, great. No. A Nikki Haley VP slot is a guarantee that Trump doesn't finish out his term and we end up with President Haley. The corrupt institutions, she is just another establishment Democrat. That's all she is. It's why you see people like the Krasenstein brothers on X going, oh man, as Democrats, we're really worried that Republicans would nominate Nikki Haley. That would be devastating for us. We'd be so afraid to face Haley. Right. That'd be the equivalent of saying this, you know. Oh man, if Republicans nominated Gavin Newsom, man, that would scare us so much. A Newsom versus Biden president, oh my God, that would worry me as a Democrat. Newsom versus Biden. Right, they want you to pick that person, that way they win either way. So... But that's what Haley's strategy is going forward. I saw a little bit of a vague speech today with Trump. Fantastic. Let me explain. So let me explain then going forward what, DeSantis is going to stick in the race for a little more, a week or two. If I don't have as much confidence as some of my other predictions. My guess is this: DeSantis loses to Haley in New Hampshire and loses in South Carolina to Haley. And at that point, I think he considers dropping out. So let's talk about DeSantis for a minute. I still like Ron DeSantis. I talked about this on this chat I was on last night. God, I'm like stream of conscious tonight. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I'm all hyped up on Diet Pepsi. All right. Why are so many people so passionate about liking Donald Trump? Now, I talk to people, by the very nature that you're watching me right now, you're more involved in politics than the average person. You just are. The average person ain't listening to some fat schmuck on a Tuesday night ramble on about politics, right? So you have more of an interest than the average person, right? I'll explain to you why I think people are so into Donald Trump, and I'll do so through my subjective perspective, right? So I'm extrapolating from my personal experience why I think that there's so much passion for him outside that. Oh, thank you. It does. Swear to good, like, I'm at work. The neighbor here where I'm at work, he actually has the official Christmas Story leg lamp up in his window right now. But so I live in rural Pennsylvania. Everyone, like, I'll tell you a little about my story if you're new to the channel, right? I grew up, everyone I know is blue collar. They're farmers. In fact, I worked on a farm for like half a day once. Wasn't very good at it. But farmers, welders, construction, mechanics. That's my area. The biggest job now is there's where they make mobile homes isn't the word. They make like stick build homes that they send out. For example, my father-in-law drives those homes all across the country. He drives oversized load. So that's the average. It's very low income where I live. Rural Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half northwest or northeast of Pittsburgh. That's where I live. So it's a poor community. It's conservative. I grew up here, and I love the blue-collar people. I do. I'm not very good at a lot of that sort of stuff. I went off to college just because that's what I thought you were supposed to do, and I was a drunk. I basically was in college just to party my face off. That was it. I didn't have a plan, didn't give a shit, didn't care, didn't have a girlfriend, didn't care. I was funny, very funny guy, very fun drunk. I wasn't like getting in fights and shit like that. It was fun. I took this debate class my first semester, maybe my second semester. Yeah, second semester. And for the final of the class, you either had to like write a big paper and then do a debate in class, or you could go to this debate tournament. And so my professor convinced me to go to this debate tournament. And in collegiate debate, that style of debate, there's 3 levels. There's novice, there's JV, and then there's varsity or open. And obviously to debate novice, you can't have much experience. JV, you could have a little more. And then varsity, anyone that qualifies can go, right? So this particular tournament, because the debate season was halfway over, was called the rookie division. And that was people that had literally no debate experience. None. And I won the tournament. And I fell in love with debate. I was just like, yeah, this is for me. And I thought, you know, I'm in there. And I remember the topic we were basically focusing on was something called the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And so basically the entire argument was this. Hey, man, we should sign this treaty because we need to lower the amount of nuclear weapons around the world. And if the United States signs the treaty, it'll lower the... And then someone else would be like, yeah, but we have to have nuclear weapons. And that was it. That's how we're talking. This is how the debate's going. And I won the tournament. Okay. So then the coach convinces me... By the way, I tried to get out of going to that tournament because I was going to a party. So I showed up the day that we were supposed to leave without a bag or anything. Was like, oh, yeah, actually, I can't go. I had some problems in my family. And my coach, who later became a really good friend of mine, was my coach for like 7 years, was like, shut your face, get in the car. We're going to pick up your clothes now. Come on. So that was it. But anyways, I then went to the next tournament. It was a novice tournament. It's the same topic, except it's bigger. There's more parts of it. And we walk into the first round, and this is what you hear. Observation 1, proliferation of the United States needs to sign the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty to be able to stop the nuclear proliferation of weapons we see in countries like Russia and other places around the world. If we don't do this, it'll be a nuclear exchange, and we'll be able to blow the world down. First step, inherency. The United States has refused to sign the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, even though they had a commitment that they would sign on to it. This is Berg in 98. Blah, 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 reading. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck is this? What is this? Like an auctioneer, it's like, what are they saying? I had no clue. My partner, who was this girl that I barely knew, that we got partnered up to be, you know, debate partners because it's 2 on 2. She started crying. It was a scene. And I thought that I was going to be big shit. I was going to walk into the debate community after winning this rookie tournament. And the next thing you know, my name would be like on the fucking national trophy within a year or two. Yeah, right. No chance. Like, I busted my ass for 4 years just to qualify for the national debate tournament. Make, like, the top 72 teams in the country. And I maybe was a top 50 to 100 debater in the country that year. But the people that were in the top tier would blow me out of the water 98 out of 100 times. I'm not saying that means that if me and them had a discussion on Trump versus Biden, they would blow me out of the water. But in the context of that game and how good they were, and I mean, almost everyone at the top level debated 4 to 6 years in high school, and they went to a private school, and they had a damn near perfect SAT score, and now they're going to Harvard, or they're going to the military academy, and they full-time debate. Meanwhile, I'm working at Burger King to pay my way through college. I'm an alcoholic. But it is what it is. Anyways, why do I tell that story? Because I was always still that blue-collar redneck. I just wasn't good at that shit. I was good at the debate stuff. The nerd shit. That's what I was good at. And so I got into politics through debate. And I'd go back and I'd be hanging out with my drunk mechanic friends and carpenter friends. And they didn't really give a shit about politics. Whatever, dude. It's kind of funny. Anyways, moving on. That was that, you know. The general political feel around my area of the world was everyone's shit. If I had to sum it up, that would be it. Everybody sucks. All the politicians are garbage. Thank you, Fedor. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the cheer. And they're not wrong. That was the general consensus. Why am I concerned about this presidential election? Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama? Like either of those people give a shit about our area of the world? And they're right. It's absolutely true. Then Donald Trump comes along. Now, Donald Trump's a billionaire from Manhattan. What does he have shit all to do with rural Pennsylvania? Nothing. And yet, for the first time in my life, I saw people that never had an interest in politics where I live registering to vote so they could go vote for Donald Trump. Why? My parents never voted in their life. My mom is now so active in politics that she volunteers at the polling station and runs the elections. What changed? Because regardless if you think Trump's a charlatan, regardless if you think his policies were shit and it didn't help people in rural Pennsylvania, the way he spoke created an enthusiasm with people that never had an interest in politics because they said, finally, there's a guy who's talking like me. There's a guy that at least somewhat represents what I believe. He's saying, fuck the system, it's all corrupt. Yep, that's how they feel. He's talking like a normal guy. Shithole countries. You think the grab him by the pussy thing? That might have done poorly with certain segments. But where I'm from, that's how we talk at the bar. That's how people looked at that. That guy's just a regular fucking guy. He's probably out drinking a fucking Busch Light and, smoking a cigarette. Hanging out with the construction workers. That's the vibe people got. He was saying shit that you were told, the polling people told you couldn't say. He's saying like, what the fuck's up with the border? Some of the shit he said I didn't agree with. Like he was like, if we're going to go in and save this country's ass, we might as well take their oil. I'm very much against that. But to the average person where I'm from, fucking A, man, I lost my friend in Afghanistan. And for what? What the fuck did we get for it? If we're going over there, we should get something. Like that shit resonated. And it wasn't just his politics like border security and fighting back against woke shit to the extent that he was and calling out the same people. The people around here didn't like the media. They thought they were shit. So they liked someone calling out the media. But it was the style that he did it in. Now, Roman's pointing out problems with Trump. Okay, he lifted up the rock, he showed us the bugs, showed us the swamp, but he didn't do enough to stop it, or he didn't do anything to stop it. Okay. What I'm telling you, though, is this country and the leadership class had abandoned so many people for so long that even just lip service is enough to make people a fan of yours for life. In other words, Romney Obama didn't do it. McCain Obama didn't do it. Bush Kerry didn't do it. Bush Gore didn't do it. Dole Clinton didn't do it. Bush Clinton didn't do it. Even Reagan, he didn't do it. None of these people fought anyone on the national stage for decades. even gave a shit enough about them to speak favorably of them. Not even that. Not even false promises. They would say things like, at least politicians never do anything for the inner city, but at least they pander to them. At least they tell them how important they are. Not that. What do we get? We're flyover country. We're rednecks. We're 10-toothed rubes. That's why Trump was so popular. Because people were desperate for anyone to just say nice things about them. Now that sucks to an extent, because what I would say to people is, don't fall for some hack that just says nice things about you but doesn't do anything. That's the Democrat game in the inner cities. You don't want to become that. Just voting for a guy because he said nice things. But not only did he say nice things, and he certainly didn't accomplish what I wanted him to accomplish, but people rightfully saw it as, okay, here's the one guy that I ever liked. And what happened? Every institution in the country is going at him full bore. He's a Russian spy. They're spying on him. They're impeaching him twice. They're blah, 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 blah. Then they see how the election shenanigans went down. They saw going into it. There were lockdowns. They're losing their jobs. They can't have a wedding for their daughter. They can't have a funeral for their dad that passed away. But Black Lives Matter could go riot. Here in my state of Pennsylvania, my governor pushed lockdown orders that he then himself violated to go march with Black Lives Matter. And people were getting more and more pissed. This is fucking bullshit. All of my life, I set out politically because there wasn't anyone that represented me. Then the one time I go out and I vote, and they fuck with the guy completely. Now they're treating us like the enemy. Then election night occurs. Massive, here in Pennsylvania, massive changes to how we vote. All of a sudden, mass mail-in voting. All sorts of crazy shit going on that I won't even bother to get into. It's happening nationally. People are furious. They think the election was stolen, rightfully or wrongfully. That's what January 6th was about. Now they don't trust the 2020 election. They think Trump was cheated. Again, rightfully or wrongfully, doesn't matter. So now we have a primary. What do you think those people are going to do? What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to abandon Trump? It doesn't matter if you're right. It doesn't matter if you could look at them and say, but listen, you're a hunter. You care about the Second Amendment, right? Yeah. Well, Trump basically didn't give two shits about the Second Amendment. He was willing to ban bump stops. He would have went further if he thought it would have helped him politically. I don't give a shit. They fucked with Trump. Screw that. As someone who wanted Vivek, who I thought he was the most talented politician I've seen maybe in my lifetime, that sucks for me. Because there's basically nothing Vivek could have said to these people to make them vote for him other than Trump. They might have said, you're the man, Vivek. I hope you're vice president. I hope you win in 2028. But they weren't going to leave Trump for him. The same's true of DeSantis. DeSantis could say, but look how I was better on lockdowns. Didn't you hate lockdowns? Yeah. And don't you hate the vaccines? Yeah. And who did Operation Warp Speed? Trump. And didn't that create the vaccines? Yeah. So therefore you're going to vote for me, right? No. But wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And it's not that they're stupid. That's not what's going on. It's not that, like, a lot of these DeSantis supporters be like, oh, you're willing to vote for Trump who's a secret Democrat because you're stupid. You're not a real conservative. It's not that at all. It's because they're loyal to someone that they thought for the first time in their life did the impossible. Stuck up for them. And I'm willing to hear people say, but that's a shitty reason. If there's a better candidate, why not go with the better candidate? That's how I'm operating. I feel the same way. Trump was the first national candidate for one of the two major political parties that I cast a vote for. But I'm not going to leave that mean that he's my default choice in 2024. To the contrary, he was my third choice. I would have preferred Vivek or DeSantis. But I understand the people that are like, nope, it's Trump or bust. I get it. I know why they're like that. I do. And I know it frustrates the shit, particularly out of DeSantis fans. Because they're like, look, we agree. We liked Trump. Not all of them. There's a lot of never Trump DeSantis people. But there's certainly good portions. I'm like my friend John Burke. It's like, I voted for Trump. I like Trump. But he failed in key areas. And DeSantis looks like a generational talent that's done great work in Florida. And I think when it comes to policy prescriptions, he's preferable to Trump in almost every way. So I understand the frustration to be like, but you know, Trump won't debate DeSantis because he knows that DeSantis is better on his record. Probably true. That frustrates the shit out of DeSantis people. I get it. I definitely do. But you don't understand. why these people would crawl over broken glass for Donald Trump. It'd be like if you're homeless and some guy gives you the first meal that keeps you alive. You're on the brink of death. Then he puts you up in an apartment. Now that guy might later become a piece of shit, but you're probably going to defend that guy because he gave you that chance when you were at your lowest. And that's how people in my area of the world are. And I bet it's like that in many, many places. The truth is, as bad of a campaign as I think DeSantis ran, and as good of a campaign as I think Vivek ran, the real truth that no one wants to hear is they never had a chance. They didn't. They could have ran the perfect campaign, and they were still going to lose to Trump. And it didn't matter if you could objectively break down every single thing they did in their campaign, their entire record, and line it up to Trump and say, in every way they're preferable. It wouldn't have mattered. That's the truth. Oh, there we go. True Believer by Eric Hoffer. Never read it, but I told this story once. One of the things that frustrated me was the political class surrounding Trump I thought was garbage. I thought it was a bunch of hangers-on, even here in Pennsylvania. So I volunteered for Trump's campaign in 2020, and I would go to a lot of Republican events, and I dealt a lot with Trump's team in Pennsylvania, his hired people. Now, this wasn't like Steve Bannon or, people like that. These are people you've never heard of that are like in charge of these 8 counties in Pennsylvania and then, etc. And I remember showing up to this kind of rally for Trump. It was at this wealthy Republican's home, and it was, it was fun. They had stuff to do. I think we were target shooting, and they had food and stuff. And I'm like an outsider. Everybody's in suits and ties. I'm in there with like t-shirts, jeans, like, okay, whatever. I'm not in the political machinery. I'm an anomaly. People liked it was like people liked me like they liked Vivek, right? Like I talked really well when I ran, and they liked that, and I'm a humorous fellow, and I'm good conversation. And I'm not saying they treated me poorly, don't get me wrong. It's just, that's not my normal running crowd, So we show up there, and I'm talking to these people, and there's some other people that don't quite fit in. And one's this elderly lady, and I think she said she was like 68, 69 years old. And I start talking to her. We're sitting on a couch, and she's explaining to me why she's a Trump supporter, and her story was incredible. She was married her whole life, and then tragically her husband passed, and I think she said she lived in Vegas, out in Nevada, and moved back to Pennsylvania to kind of be close to family and things like that after her husband passed. And she had never been voted in her life, was apolitical, didn't care, wouldn't have called herself a Republican or Democrat, she said. And she comes back and she meets, as I imagine's the case, when you go through something traumatic, you lose your life partner of that many years. One of the most important things, probably trying to be social, trying to have a community of people. And so she joined some groups, like some clubs. I don't remember specifically what it was, but like bridge clubs and stuff. And she met some women around her age that she became friends with. And one of them was like, do you want to go to this Trump rally? And she's like, sure, I don't care. Like, just hanging out with friends. And they went, and somehow they got backstage, and she got to shake Trump's hand. And she talked to Trump for like 20 seconds. And he didn't say anything super, like, to me that would come across as like, wow, what a comment. He was just like, hey, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support. We're fighting for people like you. Something like that. And that hit the heart of that woman. That woman would crawl over broken glass for Donald Trump. She couldn't stop singing his praises to me. She then became a volunteer. She was doing bake sales. She was going to every Trump rally she could. Now, part of it is she happened to get into this at a vulnerable time in her life. But whatever the reason, her passion for Donald Trump surpassed me by tenfold. So I'm sitting on the couch, and she's on this other couch, and then all of a sudden they start this presentation. The official people that are hired in Trump's team that are probably making 6 figures. And they come out, and they have a PowerPoint that they're about to present to us. It was 7 slides. Now, I'm shit when it comes to technology. I could put together a 7-slide PowerPoint in 20 minutes. Here we go. So you can see from this first slide, we think we really need to get more yard signs out here. We're running out of orders. So this county had about 7,000 that was ordered last month. We're trying to increase that. We'd like to get that to about 10,000. If we go over to this next slide here, there's going to be several events next month. You can see these are what the events, and what we're asking is if everybody could try to call 10 people on the phone banks, we think that would be really, really great. Let's go to this next slide. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is it? This is your team? And I think I pissed some people off after their presentation. I didn't say it to those 2 guys that were doing, and they were like in their early 20s. But I said to a bunch of other people, I said, you see that lady on the couch there? And they were like, yeah. I was like, she should have been the one up there speaking. That woman got me fired up. This kid with his 20-minute PowerPoint presentation talking in a monitor, what the fuck is that? That, to me, that I think about that woman a lot. That woman helps me understand the appeal of Donald Trump. Well, it's true that, like, we'll talk about some of that too. Let me get a water, and I'll be right back. I'm getting a little mealy-mouthed here. So for me, that's how I knew that Trump, very, very small chance that the primary wasn't sealed up even before one vote was cast. I said I thought 95% chance he would win the primary, and I feel that I was... Other people could have looked at the tea leaves and came to the same conclusion for different reasons, but I think that was obvious, the direction it was going. Does that mean DeSantis shouldn't have ran? No. Vivek ran. Is Vivek in a better spot politically today or before the primary began? What do you all think? If Vivek wants to consider a political run in the future, is he better off today or was he better off before he announced he was running? Akbar, I think if I was elected, they would try to foist upon me certain picks, and I would resist that, and then they would probably do the best to make sure I was one term. Yeah, Vivek's far better off politically today than he was before the primary. And he ran against Trump. How do you explain that? Well, because Vivek ran the campaign that I said that Ron DeSantis should have ran. If somehow, so... Is it true that Vivek's candidacy was basically a surrogacy for Trump? Yeah. Vivek had to know the chances of him winning were next to none unless something terrible happened to Trump. That's true. And I said so from the get-go. He was running to be the heir apparent or to get a cabinet position. That's what he was doing. And it benefited Trump massively because it basically allowed MAGA to be on the stage during debates without Trump being there. And Vivek performed very well, I thought, in the debates. So, it helped Trump. It was mutually beneficial. We'll talk about Trump talking shit on Vivek here earlier this week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I thought that's how DeSantis should have ran his campaign. Now, let's ask this question. If the impossible would have happened and Vivek would have won in Iowa, if he would have pulled 50% of the vote and Donald Trump only got 30%, do you think Vivek would have switched gears? Yeah, of course. He would have said, holy shit, I could win this thing. Maybe then he goes after Trump in different ways a little. I don't think he would have fully, but he might have changed gears. So you're always holding out hope, like, yeah, I could win this, maybe. But you know what the plan A is going in, the most likely outcome. So you want to set yourself up. Yeah, I know Andrew thinks that. I disagree with him. He might be right. So what? If I have a choice between one person who I'm 90% sure is a snake, but is at least promising the right things, or a person that I'm 100% sure isn't a snake and is going to follow through with every promise and his promises are insufficient, which person would I choose? Donald Trump's telling me he's going to build the FBI a new building in D.C. Vivek's telling me he's going to eliminate the FBI. Even if there's a 90% chance Vivek's full of shit, there's a 100% chance Trump ain't going to eliminate the FBI, so I'll try Vivek. That's how I feel. And I don't think he's a snake, but that's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. Look, I don't put my faith in any one person. Ever. I don't even put 100% faith in me. Anyways. I thought that the best way for DeSantis to try to win and to position himself would have, I have no problem with him running. Now, I've said this a million times, so I'll skip through it fast. I thought that the strategy should have been to basically do what Vivek did. To praise Trump, say he did an amazing job. He understands why people were so enthused about Donald Trump, but differentiate himself on key issues and just be like, look, I think I would do better on COVID. I'll hold people accountable for COVID. I'll make sure that we're not signing these spending bills. And sort of have the message, Trump did the impossible. No one could ever take that away from him. He started the MAGA movement. He started the populist movement. I have no problem with Trump still being a torchbearer for that, but I think I could take that torch a little further than Trump right now. You're probably not going to win, but you weren't going to win anyways running the campaign that DeSantis ran, which I think was bad. It's hard to convince people, hey, I really like that guy, but you should vote for me. That's the problem Vivek was running into. But had DeSantis ran that campaign, even if he doesn't win, which again, I've already explained to you why I thought there was no chance DeSantis was ever going to win anyways. Yeah, I think Vivek's the best VP choice, yeah. You at least set yourself better for the future. You get yourself a potential cabinet position if you want with Trump. You set yourself up to be the heir apparent in 2028. No, maybe not. Maybe Vivek outperforms you in 2028, but at least you're set up. What's Trump, or what's... Let me ask the audience a couple questions here, see if you agree, and then we'll talk about DeSantis' future. Is the future of the Republican Party MAGA? Are those voters the type, like, let's say Trump wins or loses, doesn't matter in 2024, and then he agrees he's, whether because he won and he can't run again, or he's just too old, he doesn't want to run in 2028. Do you think the Trump voting bloc is going to be the direction the party goes, or is it going to go primarily back towards the old, like, neocon? It might be lagging. I noticed that, so apologies. Yeah, I think it's still the MAGA party. And the MAGA people are still going to like Trump. Not all of them. There's going to be populists that are willing to say, I think Trump screwed up. So then the question becomes, if over 50% of the party is MAGA, and they're pissed off for some reason at Ron DeSantis, I don't think MAGA is just a personality cult. I don't. If MAGA is just a personality cult, then once Trump's out, you would predict that you're more likely to go to a Nikki Haley than a Vivek. I disagree. Yeah, okay, maybe MAGA is not the right word. America First. I would say more of a populist form of conservatism, as opposed to more of a neocon form of conservatism. I think it's going to go the populist direction. I think it's going to continue that momentum for the foreseeable future. Where's that leave DeSantis, if that's true? That's definitely true, Roman. Now, if Trump supporters are like, we don't like DeSantis, we think he's the enemy. Okay. That's cool. You still have the establishment wing of the party. they're all in on someone like Nikki Haley. If they had to choose between Haley or DeSantis, who do you think they're going to pick? Haley. Okay, so where's that leave DeSantis? He's sort of out in the wind. You might say, yeah, but Trump people, populists, will be willing to go with DeSantis once Trump's out. Really? Or will they go with Vivek? Or Don Jr.? Or anyone else? Byron Donalds? Now, if DeSantis positions himself to be favorable with Trump people, it's a completely different game. That's why I think that this is what's likely to happen. I think Ron DeSantis will drop out, and I think, despite what many of Ron DeSantis supporters are online saying, that he will endorse Donald Trump. He will. And I think he'll do that because he's an intelligent man, and he's a moral person, and he understands, despite his personal disdain for Trump the person, that a Trump administration would be far superior to achieving his goals than a Biden administration. Thank you, Samsov, for the super chat. 14 Canadian dollars. First stream of yours as a non-American. Trump's unwavering popularity is baffling, so I'm here to learn how you guys view him in politics. Seem like a great guy, so I say thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Donalds he's an outsider for the VP slot, Byron Donalds. So I think DeSantis will say, because, like, I remember saying this in the one debate where John Burke said to me, he's like, it's almost like Vivek and DeSantis are like allies. That's true. They are. They're running against each other. They'll criticize each other. But ultimately, if you could sit down and in a private conversation that everyone involved knew would not get disclosed to everyone else, and you could sit down and be like, hey, Ron, if it wasn't you, who would you want it to be? Would you rather it be like Nikki Haley, or would you rather it be like Vivek or Trump? He'd be like, oh, Vivek or Trump, easy. I want to be Nikki Haley. And if it was like, well, if you had to choose between Trump or Biden, he would be like, Trump, easily. And I think he will not let his personal ego get in the way of making that call. Now, that doesn't mean all DeSantis supporters will say, oh, okay, we're in on Trump. I'm not saying that. But I think that's what DeSantis will do. And then here's the part that I think people might disagree with. I think Trump will welcome DeSantis with open arms. I think my reading of Trump, and I'm proved more correct every day, my reading of Trump is he doesn't think of things like the average person does. I think Trump looks at everything as like a competition, like a business competition or a game, right? So Trump's running against Hillary Clinton, and she's the worst person in the world, lock her up, blah, blah, blah. Now Trump on the campaign trail is like, beautiful Hillary, I call her beautiful Hillary. What? Trump's out there saying Gavin Newsom, not that bad of a guy. What? How's that make sense? Yeah, he just did it with Vivek. Talk shit on Vivek. 2 days later, great guy, proud to have him here. How's that make sense? And I was explaining this to some people last night. I got this friend that we used to like play like beer league softball and stuff, who would absolutely, nicest guy in the world. If you were catcher, he would fucking steamroll you if you were on the other team. He'd put your ass in the hospital so that your kids couldn't eat for a month because you can't work because you're in a hospital. As soon as the game's over, he's your best friend. How do you explain that? Weird, super competitive guy. So Trump, it's like he's in a business deal in Manhattan. He's willing to bury you, man. He's going to buy your company and sell all the assets and this, that, and the other, and you're in this crazy fight with this guy. You're fighting for your financial life. And then it ends, and win or lose, the next day he's like, hey, you want to go out? U.S. Open's in town. You want to go check out a tennis match? How's the wife doing? Good? Great? And you'd be baffled, like, what? Isn't this guy was just trying to, like, I mean, think about it. Like, Trump's going to insult, like, Ted Cruz's wife. Ron DeSantis' wife. And then as soon as Cruz is like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to put my weight behind Ted Cruz, beautiful wife. How does that make sense? Yeah, it does make sense if you're into politics. That's how Trump looks. Now, it's not always good, because I think he needs to keep up the aggression on people like Hillary Clinton, but I digress. So you see it with Vivek, if Ron DeSantis would reach out to Trump tomorrow and be like, I'm dropping out, I'm going to endorse you, Trump would be out there, Ron ran a great campaign. He even started to say it last night. He'd be like, Ron ran a great campaign. He's a fantastic guy. He's done great things in Florida. And you'd be sitting at home going like, but didn't you complain about how bad he was doing in Florida? Isn't that what your whole spiel was? Won't matter. Moving forward. I don't blame Ron DeSantis for running. I defended it. Again, I would have chose DeSantis over Trump. I defended DeSantis' decision to run. I'm not one of these people like, well, his chance of winning was so small, he should have just allowed Trump to have it. I disagree with that. If you think you're the best person for the job and you think there's even a small chance you could win, then run. That's why I ran for Congress. The chance of me winning was less than the chance of Ron DeSantis winning here. But I ran. Why? Because I thought I was the best person. That's it. That's all it took for me. Well, wait your turn. What turn? I could get hit by a bus on the way to work tomorrow. So I predict that inevitably what will happen will be that DeSantis will reach out. Now, here's the crazy part, and this is what... Now we're going to get into some more minutia. And I'll only tell my stream this. This isn't the sort of stuff that I'll be saying on X, Twitter, or things like that much. Right? I can't stand the majority of influencers online. I just can't. It is evident to me that so much of it's about their personal ego or their personal brand. Now, it's easy for me to say that, seeing as how this isn't my career. I care about the country. I care about politics. I truthfully put out what I would like to see politically and the people that I like, and I give predictions and stuff like that. But this isn't my day job. It's a hobby. I make a small amount of money. I'm incredibly appreciative to anyone who sends money. It's not my career. As such, it gives me the freedom to say whatever the hell I want. I don't have to make a calculation in my head, something like, geez, I'd like to criticize Trump today, but I'm afraid if I do, I'll lose a bunch of my streaming money I get because people will be mad, and then my kid won't eat next month. Never crosses my mind. If it was my sole source of income and I knew that I was about to have a political position that would ruin my channel, would I come out and say it? I'd like to think not. I'd like to think that I would have, or I'd like to think that I would. I like to think that I have the integrity that I would say, look, all I could do is say what I truly believe and let the chips fall where they may. But maybe not. I don't know. I'm not in that position. I don't know. Maybe I convince myself for the greater good not to say it. Could be. But whatever their motivation is or their reasoning, or maybe they're all great people back home, I just can't stand it. I can't. I'm so over it. I'm so over the DeSantis influencer and the Trump influencer and the stupid fucking games and the, and it's so evident that so much of it's about their personal ego, their brand, positioning themselves to get more clicks or more views or more influence. I understand that's human nature to an extent. I get it, but I just don't care. I don't care to get involved at all. Oh, cat turds fighting with John Burke tonight. Don't give a shit. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, it becomes a joke. Like, it becomes a joke where you see, like, these influencers, right? You'll see them like, oh, Vivek's great. He's doing great. He did great. I think Vivek won the debate. Yeah, he's doing great. Vivek, he's the man, blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as Trump puts out one message like, Vivek, is saying that he needs to save me. He's gone too far. All of a sudden, they're like, I never liked Vivek. I knew he was a snake. I knew he was the worst. Blah, 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 blah. Then 2 days later, Trump's like, Vivek's he's a great guy. Blah, blah, blah. And now they're like, well, Vivek he had to get a little smacked. He had to get his hand smacked a little, but he's a good guy again. It's a fucking joke. Why would I ever believe anything that those people say ever again to me? They might as well just have, like, you know, like a NASCAR type paint job on their shirt. Paid for by the Trump campaign or the DeSantis campaign or, like, you know, this super PAC or whatever. It's such a joke to me. Like, I would rather listen to someone I disagree with that I think's giving me an authentic point than someone that's just telling me what the talking points that they think they're supposed to say is. I just have no time of day for it. None. And there's an awful lot of them. And I'm talking, I don't mean the average Joe Schmo with 10 followers on X. I'm not really talking about them. I'm talking about people that are real influencers, that have tens of thousands of people watching their stuff. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Tom was there last night in my conversation on The Crucible. So that's how I feel. Yeah, that Tim Cool guy. Whew. So I stay out of that shit. I do. Those people, not all of them, are like Trump. Trump could call you a piece of shit to your face one day and the next day be like, come here, you're my best friend. But a lot of these people, because it's about their personal ego, they're going to be like, no. DeSantis people insulted me. So fuck them. Keep a name names. Keep a list of names. These people aren't welcome into the MAGA fold. And there's DeSantis people. Write down the names of these Trump people that talked rude. This is why I would never support Trump in a general. Keep their names. Never trust them. And it's just like, ugh. It's their right to do so. I'm not losing sleep over it, but it's just like, I'm so over it. I can't even play this clip, believe it or not, because it'll be against terms of service. Now, I have said that I actually blamed the Trump influencers worse. I thought there was stuff, to me, I don't mind, like, it's funny, because I know there's at least a few people from the Crucible watching. I think Andrew Wilson shares the same sort of opinion that I have. Families are off limits. Andrew's family's a little different because Rachel's a streamer. So if someone wants to insult Rachel Wilson, well, she's a streamer. She put herself out. That's one thing. But if they want to insult their children, that's different. My wife doesn't stream. If someone insults her or brings her in, that's different. I even go further than Andrew, right? Like, you could say what you want about me. You could say that I'm a bad faith piece of shit, conspiracy theorist, blah, 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 blah. You could say all of that. Have you ever heard me delve into topics like, hey, Rob, you're going to debate Destiny. Ask him about his marriage. No. It's not who I am. I just don't care about that stuff. I don't begrudge people that want to talk about it. That's fine. Do you? I do think it's when you're talking about people that aren't in the public space, right? Like, so you're talking about someone's son who's 8 years old and you're going to insult them. I think that's ridiculous. But someone like, you know, if you're an Instagram, I believe Destiny's wife had a social media presence of some prevalence. So I get it. I get why people say, hey, that's fair game. Or he said this about me, or he said this about this person, so it's fair game. Maybe. I'm not morally judging anyone for that. I just choose not to. It's not my thing. I think relationships are tough. I don't wish anyone ill in that front. I'm not going to talk about the person I'm running against, wife or kids. I think there were Trump people that went over the line talking about certain shit. Talking about DeSantis' family. I thought it was over the line. Personally. I'm not losing sleep over it. And I didn't blame Trump. I did not blame Trump or DeSantis for the actions of their influencers. I think that's makes no sense to me. Would I like it if if Aftershock goes out and starts talking shit to people in heinous ways and people say, he's a mod for robnoerr. Fuck robnoerr. Why should I get lumped in with him? I didn't do it, It'd be different if I'm telling him to do it. Thank you, Omar. I appreciate that. And if I'm just calling it objectively as I can see, I thought that from my eyes, I didn't see everything. I'm not claiming that. But I thought that some of the Trump people were worse than the worst of the DeSantis people. That's how I read it. There was a lot of scummy personal attacks that felt that they were slightly more coming from the Trump type people than the DeSantis. Not to say there weren't bad DeSantis ones. I'm not saying that. I'm just calling it what it was. Anyways, why did I bring this up? Last night, there was a space, and I saw someone made a tweet about this, and it was DeSantis people, and they were, upset, rightfully so, about the... And again, don't believe the cope. I'll call that out. That it was a bad night for Ron DeSantis. It was. I did hear about Rob's editor being a piece of shit. Yeah, ogre. And so they're doing this space, and the name Scott Presler comes up. I think Scott Presler is probably the most inspiring person in politics at this point. Particularly for someone who's not a politician. Scott Presler works, if you don't know him, he goes by The Persistence on Twitter. He keeps his nose to the grindstone. He's never engaged in drama. He is completely committed to increasing turnout to get victories for conservatives, for Republicans. He's doing things like going into inner cities where Republicans traditionally don't go. And he's doing things like through his own sweat, cleaning up garbage, doing his best to do that stuff. He's been involved in basically without getting any sort of praise from the Republican institutions whatsoever. He's been someone that's primarily driven up Republican participation, probably more than anyone in the RNC, and they refuse to give him any recognition. But instead of sitting there and just saying, this isn't fair, blah, 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 he'll say, hey, where are you? Why aren't you recognizing me? And then he gets back to work. That's what he does. I don't care if you don't like him because you don't like his religion or his sexuality, whatever the case may be. You cannot deny that guy's work ethic and that he's done such in a way that's antithetical to what you see most of the sort of influencers doing. He has not engaged in personal drama. He has not engaged in personal attacks. He has tried to make as big of a tent as possible. That's what he's done. And I find it to be very admirable. I really do. These piece of shits last night, just random DeSantis fans that are upset about his performance. I'm not saying these are people hired by Ron DeSantis. I'm not saying because of these people I hate Ron DeSantis. I'm not saying any of that. They bring up Scott Presler because Scott endorsed Trump. I understand why Scott endorsed Trump. Maybe Scott endorsed Trump because he thinks Trump is the best person, or maybe Scott endorsed Trump because he realizes it's going to take a huge effort to overcome the corruption and the institutional bias that will face the Republican candidate, and he sees that it will inevitably be Trump, and so he's trying to coalesce people around Trump, and it's exactly what I've been doing. The exact same thing. And so they bring up Scott Presler. I can't use the language they used, but let's just say they had some very colorful language, these DeSantis supporters, about Scott Presler, because he endorsed Trump. Some homophobic slurs, some mocking his appearance. And Scott Presler puts out a message and is like, I'm only going to address this once. I'm not trying to get dirty. I understand DeSantis people are upset. Totally good. My job's trying to drive out turnout and make sure that we get the Republican candidate across the finish line. Yeah, I hear you, Roman. Is there a possibility for red states to amicably succeed from blue states? Probably not amicably. There'll be more and more bifurcation. That might be the case 80 years from now, but I don't see a path to that in the short term. So, I messaged Scott. We talked a little about this because Scott's a cool guy, and I've actually had some private conversations with him. I think he's a really good guy, and I know Scott heard me on several spaces with primarily DeSantis supporters, and I'm just going to tell you my strategy right now. I always try to look and ask what I could do better when there's some sort of failure in my life. I try to always say, yes, there are people, if I'm going to point the finger at other people, I have to be willing to point the finger at myself. And so when Trump lost it, go look. Right? I know how it is. I know that politics is so visceral now. and people are so team-oriented that when your team wins, you just want to shove it in their face and be, yeah, eat that shit. I understand that's how people are. And I understand people are devastated. There's, oh no, my guy lost. That's not me. Go back and look at what I was saying in 2016 when Trump won. I didn't gloat. I said, okay, now it's the hard part. Let's get to work. I didn't mind celebrating. I celebrated. But I understood a lot of my friends were really hurt. And I wasn't like, yeah, fuck you. It would have felt good. Because my friends were telling me I'm racist for voting for Donald Trump. People I've known all my life. All of a sudden I'm a piece of shit because I voted for the other guy. And I had to tell them, I was like, were you a warmonger? You know, when a bunch of people sodomized Muammar Gaddafi with a bayonet and tortured him and paraded him around town, and Hillary said, we came, we saw, he died. Is that what you were? Is that what your vote to Hillary was? No, you just thought she was better than the alternative. So why don't I get the same benefit of the doubt? You think Trump's racist, so I'm racist. Ridiculous. You know? Nonetheless, it would have felt good after all that shit to have been like, yeah, eat that. How you like that? Trump, but I didn't do it. By the way, I'm like this with sports too. Right? Like a good friend of mine was a big Philadelphia Flyers fan, and I was a Penguins fan. And I remember when the Penguins beat them the one year, I bit my tongue. I was like, And then my other friend's just giving it to my Flyers friend. Yeah, eat that shit. I was like, dude, you're going to get it twice as hard the next time the Flyers win. Wait and see. So anyways, when I lose, which the only major election in my lifetime that I ever really cared about that we won was 2016. So every other one's a loss. 2018, 2020, 2022. Loss. Go watch my streams. The night of or the day after. Do you see me? God damn it. Oh. Do you see that? Almost every time. You know what I say? I'm like, that sucks. Here's what I got wrong. Here's what I need to do better. That's how I approach it. And I know the schadenfreude that I will get people. If Trump loses in 2024, election night, if I'm streaming, which I'll probably be streaming, there will be a ton of left-wingers that will come in here, yeah, fuck you. And I'll say, that's cool. Fine. I get it. I know. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, how dare you? I'm pissed. Ban. I'm not going to do that. Okay. If Trump wins, I ain't rolling into Dylan Burns stream or Destiny stream and be like, yeah, fuck you. It's not my style. I don't care if you do that. I'm not saying that makes you a terrible person. It's just not my style. So after particularly the 2022 loss, and it was a disappointment, the 2022 election, I started to say, what can I do better? And the first thought I had, I failed completely, which that I needed to spearhead a change in Republican leadership in Pennsylvania at the state level GOP. And I made some moves trying to contact people, and I realized it was going to be such an uphill battle, I wouldn't be able to achieve anything meaningful, whatever. So then I turned my focus to 2024. I predict that Donald Trump will win the primary, and I said he probably has a 5% chance to win a general election. How can that be? He's up in the polls. Joe Biden's so bad. Wait until you see the shit that's about to unfold. If you thought the shenanigans in 2016 and 20 were bad, wait until you see what 2024 has to offer. Just wait. But there's certain issues. Total war, yeah. The only way to overcome it will be every single vote is going to matter. Every single category of people. And a lot of people don't like that. Let's say you're a Christian nationalist. Do you want log cabin Republicans voting for your guy? Republicans that believe in gay rights? Probably not. You're like, no, that's not what I want. I'm sorry to tell you, that's what it's going to take to win. Let's say you're a DeSantis or you're a Trump supporter and you don't like DeSantis supporters. Are you going to be able to win without DeSantis supporters? No, you're not. What about Democrats that have been lifelong Democrats that talk shit on Trump for years and years and years? But maybe they're super pissed off about illegal immigration now. Yeah, you should try to reach out to them too. And that's really hard. I have convinced myself since 2022 that my primary goal was to get any candidate that I thought was worthy in winning the national election in 2024 across the finish line. And that would mean that I would have to bite my tongue many, 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 many times. You know how much I would love to just rip in to some of these big influencers from the Trump side, from the DeSantis side, and elsewhere? I would love to. I would absolutely love to rip into them. But I'm not going to. Let me give you an example. John Burke. John Burke is now someone who will not support Trump no matter what, even in the general election. When I did spaces with John Burke, his audience overwhelmingly hates Trump so bad. There is no circumstance, there is no candidate in the world from any party that they would be unwilling to vote for over Donald Trump. That's how they legitimately feel. They would take Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. They'll take Joe Biden over Donald Trump. I think it's insane. But instead of being like, you fucking idiots, I have consistently, night after night after night after night after night, been like, I understand. I get it. But please let me try to make the case. Peter Zeihan's a sack of shit. Here's all you need to know about Peter Zeihan. He had this video from Shreveport, Louisiana, in the summer of 2022 or 3. In it, he suggested that Ukraine's chance to win the war would be that they had to cause a mass casualty event, because the only two chances to Russia to lose would be one, for an internal coup inside of Russia, which Zeihan said he thinks would be next to impossible given how Vladimir Putin's positioned himself. The other would be that it would require a mass casualty event of Russians in order to end the war favorably for Ukraine. And he suggested that the way to do that would be to stop food production in the area that was important for Russia to get so much of their food, so it would cause sort of a mass starvation. And the way he suggested doing that was by blowing up this one particular dam. And then, surprise, surprise, that dam got blown up. Interesting. And did Peter Zeihan say, shrewd strategy by Ukraine there? No, you know what he said? Russia did it. And you're a conspiracy theorist if you disagree. Wait. So you said there was only basically one possibility for Russia to lose, and Russia did it to themselves. That's your argument. Were you wrong then when you said this would be really bad for Russia? Or are you claiming that Russia is so stupid that they literally we're going to blow up this dam and cause mass starvations of ourselves? That's all you need to know about Peter Zeihan. Peter Zeihan, definitely smart, definitely has a detailed reading of things, right? That unless you're heavily researched, it's hard to counter. But he is on the payroll of our U.S. intelligence agencies. That's who he is. You're getting the CIA's talking point. That's what you're getting with Peter Zeihan. That's it. And if you disagree with him, he'll say, you're a stooge of Vladimir Putin. So before anyone says, how dare you, he fully admits that he communicates and works with intel agencies. So it's not a conspiracy theory for me to say that. But he'll have no problem saying, Tucker's working with Putin. Elon Musk is working with Putin. There's my little rant about Peter Zeihan. Nonetheless. So you end up in this weird situation where, I'm talking to I'm going to continue to talk to DeSantis people. Do I think I could convince a streamer like John Burke to change his mind? No. Do I think 80% of the people that are in that community, or in the DeSantis community, that are like, I hate Trump, I'd never vote for Trump, I would say probably at least 80% of them, there is literally nothing that I, nor anyone in the world, could ever say that will convince them otherwise. I could talk to them every day for 8 hours a day and make the best arguments, and they're not going to change their mind. But there's a chance for that 20%. So I'll keep doing it. Because, I mean, again, the last election was decided by 40,000 votes. If I could convince one influencer's audience that's talking to 300 DeSantis supporters, and I could convince 60 of those DeSantis supporters to vote for Trump, I did something. If I could get on Tim Pool's show, and I could bring that message to convince 600 DeSantis supporters, or 6,000, now we're talking. So that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what Scott Presler's trying to do. That's why my argument was, I was telling you all on the show, and people could back this up. I said 95% chance Trump wins. Anything could happen, but I think Trump's pretty much got it wrapped up. In fact, I remember doing a show the day they indicted him, was like, that's it. That's the end. Trump's definitely won the primary. But when I talk on those spaces, I didn't necessarily say that. I told the truth, and the truth was, yeah, I prefer DeSantis. I ended up preferring Vivek at the end, but I still preferred DeSantis over Trump. That's honest to God truth. That's still how I feel. But the way I phrased it to them was I said, listen, if DeSantis wins, I'm going to be reaching out to Trump people saying, you got to come on the DeSantis train. You have to. We can't afford another Democrat administration. But are you willing to say the same? That if Trump wins, are you willing to say, okay, that's how I was trying to phrase it. I wasn't trying to phrase it like, oh, I'm a big Trump man, and so I want you to vote for my guy. So I'll say, that's not true. That's not what I was doing. Did I see Tim blow up in Luke? I heard about it, but I didn't. I didn't see that. So, you know, that going forward, that's going to be what my agenda is. I'm going to be trying to build coalitions where possible, to do everything in my power to encourage people to vote for Donald Trump, unless he picks Nikki Haley as VP. Then you're on your own, buddy. But other than that, you're sick of having your vote held hostage by the GOP. So you might write in DeSantis if it's... Well, how would that... The establishment wing of the GOP doesn't want Trump. At all. They don't want DeSantis either, but they prefer DeSantis to Trump. You know, I'll say this. I'll say this about Tim Pool. You know, like, listen, at the end of the day, there's a fine line, right, between doing your best to be a team player and trying to get the person that you want to win, right? I'm not being... Maybe you all could tell me. I guess I'll ask you all your opinion. I don't think I'm being disingenuous by telling you the honest truth right here that a lot of these people I would like to say, fuck you, but I'm not going to say it. However, I'm not going to say lies. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm still going to tell the truth. I'm still going to say, well, hey, here's why I think you should vote for this guy. I'm just going to leave out some of this stuff that aggravates me. I don't think that makes me a disingenuous person. I'm willing to bite my tongue on certain things that my ego wants to be like, you want to come at me, I'll come at you. I'm willing to bite my tongue on those things for trying to win this election. But what I'm not willing to do is sell out my integrity. I'm not going to be like, oh, whatever Trump tells me to say, I'm going to say. If Trump tells me to hate Vivek, then I hate Vivek. But then if he tells me he's cool the next day, then I don't think he's cool. And if DeSantis tells me that Trump's a piece of shit, then I think Trump's a piece of shit. But if DeSantis tomorrow says that Trump's really cool, then I'll think Trump's pretty cool. Like, I'm not going to do that. I can't. I can't do it. Why would you sell yourself out? I don't get it. And I know the criticism of me, wasn't that what you're doing by not picking fights with the people that you're annoyed with? I don't think so. I think that's different. You know, it's the equivalent of, you got the guy at work that you really can't stand, but you never call him out. That's different than running around kissing his ass. One's despicable and the other's like, okay, I get it. You don't want to rock the boat. Any other questions specifically on... people said about Trump's ego wouldn't allow him to pick something like Vivek. I don't know that that's true. I really don't. I think as long as Trump's the top dog, that's good enough for him. I think someone like Vivek, if Trump trusts him, if he did, is actually probably exactly what Trump would like. Because I think Vivek is more of like, he'll sell it to Trump like this. I think that you are directionally right on all of your policies, on almost every one of your policies. Absolutely, you're directionally right. Let me handle the details. And I think Trump will like that. Like, I could delegate it to this dude. He's the detail man. He'll figure out, here's where we put people exactly on the border. Here's how we do this. Here's how we do that. And Trump, at this point, maybe not in 2016, but at this point, he's a little older. He's dealing with so much shit. I think that that might be a possibility. Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, right? Like, here's another thing I'll say about this, right? How many people that are talking shit on Trump now talk shit on him when it mattered? Because if you were talking shit on him when he was making bad decisions, maybe he could have been convinced to not, such as embracing lockdowns or Operation Warp Speed. I was, but where were so many of these other people? Now it's like, okay, we're trying to win the big game. Now we're going to talk shit now. But when you had the ability to make meaningful changes that would have helped you win the game and would have helped, you didn't say anything. I have the opposite approach. I'm not going to go on Tim Pool's show and make criticisms of Donald Trump if I go on the show. If it comes up germanely in the topic, sure. But I'm not going to seek to go on there and be like, well, Tim, now that I'm here, here's my criticisms of Trump. I have to say it. Even like when it was, I was endorsing Pennsylvanians or trying to help people in Pennsylvania, Republicans, I told Mehmet Oz to his face I didn't like him. But I still thought he was preferable to John Fetterman. Not so sure now, but... Would I disclose files on UFOs? Sure. I guess it would depend, right? If they were like, okay, so here's the deal with UFOs. If you tell everyone the alien said they will immediately blow up Earth, then I guess I wouldn't. But if it was just, we've met extraterrestrials, we don't know what's going on, sure, I'd disclose it. Is there anything planned? I'm doing a show with Ian Crossland, Tim Pool's co-host. I'm doing Ian's show here in February 7th. But the only reason I brought up Tim Pool was because people were talking about this guy Luke going on Tim Pool's show and then shitting on Donald Trump and then Tim getting upset about it. But I think that Tim's had some lamentable views. For example, he seems to excuse anything that Trump does, even if I think it's dumb, and then wants to hyper criticize DeSantis' team if they're doing similar things but less egregious. Like AI stuff, or photoshopping a photo of Trump, he'll be very upset about that, but if it's a Photoshop of DeSantis, Okay, Luke's one of his co-hosts too. I know Ian was. I've seen Luke on there. Fetterman, believe it or not, I think Fetterman's getting a little better, but a lot of it's show too. There are people, like Bill Maher's one of these guys. They see the writing on the wall. They see that the progressive pendulum swung too far. So they're willing to push back on certain things because they know that culturally that shit's seen as too far. So they're positioning themselves to still have their shit opinions, but not have the most shit opinions. All right, let's do something fun. Maybe. All right. So, in my ongoing wars with shit lefties, I had another good one here the other day, which got overshadowed by, obviously, the more important story of the caucus. Left-wing hack Pisco, that I debate all the time, decided to prod me a little while I was at work on a claim that I've been making. And that claim is, well, let's start with this. Obviously, January 6th wasn't an insurrection, but the left has and the establishment have hyperbolically suggested it as such, saying things like, they had weapons. Really, what kind of weapons? Spears? My God, they had spears? I didn't see that. Well, you know, the flag. That's a spear. Thank you so much for the follow. I hate BLM. You're at the right place. They had bludgeoning weapons. Really, what? Like a cell phone? You could bludgeon someone with a cell phone. Piercing weapons, like a pen. Some of the people had pepper spray. Right, like pretty much every woman I know has pepper spray on their keys. It's clear. It's clear that that's what's going on. And so then one of the ways you respond to that's like, oh, okay, cool. Let's look at all these left-wing riots. Insurrections, right? Look, they're armed. January 13th, they were armed. They had bludgeoning weapons. They had spears. They were pushing on the fence. That's a terrorism enhancer. That's what I was told. Of course, the worst specific action was May 30th, 2020, when a bunch of lefties, unlike January 6th, took lethal weapons in the form of Molotov cocktails, injured dozens of officers, burnt down a guard station, in an attempt to break through into the White House and get to Donald Trump, forcing Donald Trump to be evacuated. And the reaction to that by our national media and prominent Democrats was to mock Trump, to call him bunker boy or bunker bitch, or make fun of him for having to be in a bunker. And I talk about that a lot. Because remember, they're saying Trump's language matters. What's the proof that Trump engaged in an insurrection so that he should be removed from a ballot? Well, the proof is the language that he used. He said things like, fight like hell. Yeah, but didn't he also say be peaceful? Well, he didn't mean that. When he said be peaceful, he didn't mean that. He meant be violent then, too. But wait a minute, don't politicians say fight like hell all the time? Yeah, but when Trump says it, he meant literally fight. So that's how ridiculous they've fallen. So when you say, look, when Trump had to be evacuated, they made fun of him. When January 6th happened, we had people like Adam Kissinger bawling on national television. AOC claiming she had PTSD. So Pisco reaches out to me because he was doing a kick or keep January 6th base. He says, let's see if I can bring it up. He says, hey, robnoerr, I'm looking for the quotes of prominent Democrat politicians or mainstream media folks, news folks, calling Trump a bunker boy or bunker bitch in response to the May 2020 incident. Let me know if you have those quotes. And he says, inquiring because I assume this is not just stuff random people said on Twitter that you think is relevant to the barometer to test the standards from like the mainstream institutions or news sources. Now, what's Pisco's argument here? What's he saying? What's he setting up? So what's the argument he's trying to say here? Pretty simple, right? No Democrat said that. No mainstream media person said that. You're talking about just randos on Twitter. Now, the implication... Pisco's a person. The implication is, okay, maybe it would be a big deal if Democrats said that, but they didn't. It was just random people online. That's the implication. That's what he's saying. He's not saying, that's not a big deal. They called him bunker boy, so what? He's saying, show me someone prominent saying that. Now, I'm at work, and oftentimes you don't save every single news source, so I'm sure there's way more, but in 5 minutes or so I was able to come up with this. Here's Mehdi Hassan, the day after, saying from Spurs to bunker boy. Greg Sargent, who writes for the Washington Post, wrote, President of the United States cowering in fear of delivering a national address while instead issuing deranged tweets from his underground bunker. Amy Siskin scathing, Trump's hiding out in a bunker. And Tom Hanks kid, okay, whatever. Jenny Durkin, the mayor of Seattle, make us all safe. Go back to your bunker. So there, the prominent people involved in politics or the media that was making fun of Trump, who had just suffered through an insurrection with people using lethal weapons attempting to get to him, the President of the United States, to the point where he was forced to be evacuated. Chuck Yeager called him a bunker bitch, okay. And I'm sure there was many more that did. So, pretty good list, right? Decent. Here's what Pisco says in response. Thanks for the Mehdi Hassan one. Don't see anyone prominent politically or on mainstream news calling him bunker bitch. The other ones you provided don't use the term bunker boy or bunker bitch. So just want to be clear on the scope of prominent individuals using those labels specifically. Now the reason I use the labels bunker boy and bunker bitch specifically is because those were the hashtags that were trending. But the implication here is Pisco saying, okay, one guy said bunker boy. The others just made fun of him for being in a bunker. But they didn't use the term bunker boy. Do you see what a shithead he is when he's arguing? Like, what's the relevance of that? So if they would have said instead, bunker fuckhead boy. Oh, that's not bunker boy. That doesn't count. What? And he says, like I've heard you say numerous times, they called him bunker boy or bunker bitch as a way to point out the hypocrisy of the media. And if it's just Mehdi Hassan and Twitter people, I want to make sure I know that. In other words, it's not like anyone prominent would make fun of Trump for being in a bunker. Oh, I know I'm throwing pearls this way, don't get me wrong. But it's illustrative of how bad faith they are. Now remember, the left's argument, including Pisco's, is Trump saying things like fight like hell is evidence that he supported the violence that occurred on January 6th. So I was quickly I recalled one other person I remember making fun of Trump being in a bunker. There was another guy. You ready? I say, would having Joe Biden mocking him for going to a bunker be good enough? I know, unless it uses the exact term bunker boy, it's perfectly fine, right? Wonder why Biden was making fun of light of the May 30th, 2020 insurrection. Quote from the Daily Mail. Joe Biden calls for Trump to step out of his own bunker, as he calls it despicable that the president would try to put words in Floyd's mouth. Biden called for Trump to come out of his own bunker after Trump confirmed he visited the underground bunker area between the White House during protest. Uh-oh, that's engaging in an insurrection. Uh-oh. What's Pisco's definition of insurrection? Using violence or threat of violence by a group of people trying to challenge the laws of the United States. Okay, violence, group of people trying to remove the president. Insurrection. May 30th, under his definition, was an insurrection. He says Trump engaged in it because of his rhetoric. Joe Biden made fun of Trump because he had to be evacuated from the insurrection. That's engagement in an insurrection. Joe Biden should be removed from the ballot. Now, what I find most interesting about this conversation, remember how it started, this tongue-in-cheek, you can't find me examples of prominent people, it's just random internet. Dude, I found an example of the most prominent person, the president, doing it. Now what? Now you've gnashed your teeth and, oh my God, I can't believe what Trump said. Oh my God. Okay, now it's Biden. Now what? So what do you think Pisco's going to say here? his defense going to be? It's a good one. I like the direction he goes. I mean, if you're a dishonest, shill, partisan piece of shit, why doesn't it matter that Joe Biden did this? Does anyone have any guess what he could come up with? Here's the take he took, right? You ready? Well, Trump said it wasn't a big deal. That's different. Yeah, that's basically it. See, here's what was going on. Let's rehash what happened May 30th. You had days of riots that were occurring in D.C. The police knows that left-wingers like to get violent, so they were prepared. And unlike January 6th, they brought lethal weapons. 3 people were arrested. 3. The day when they brought lethal weapons and engaged in an insurrection, launching Molotov cocktails at security, law enforcement, Secret Service, burning down a guard station, breaching several fencing areas, an attempt to get into the Capitol or to the White House, but they were prevented because there was adequate policing. Nonetheless, unlike January 6th, they deployed lethal weapons. 3, to my knowledge, were arrested. 3. Yeah, I would do that, Roman. I would try. That's the facts. Even the mainstream media has reported. Then what happened was the next day. Does anyone remember? This is what happened the next day. It got leaked out that Trump was evacuated to a bunker. So everyone started making fun of Trump. There were musicians who were making songs about Trump being bunker boy. It was trending on Twitter. Aha, big tough guy Trump. He had to flee. Haha, the insurrectionists came from Trump and he had to flee. And Trump's like a bull in a china shop. So what's his reaction going to be? Fuck that! I ain't fleeing nowhere. We're giving a speech right now. We're walking right across the fucking street and giving a speech. Ain't nobody going to make fun of me, call me a coward. That's who he is. So that's what he did. And then the narrative wasn't, oh my God, there was an attempted insurrection at the White House last night with lethal weapons. The narrative became, some of the security people were too harsh on the protesters the next day. Just so Trump could give a speech? That's despicable. That's authoritarianism. After January 6th, 15,000 National Guard people. After May 30th, cleared out protesters that were still there to give a speech. One of those was considered authoritarian. I'll leave you to guess which. So then Trump gives a speech in front of St. John's Church, and they said that the Bible was upside down, and they made fun of him, and ha ha ha. That's what happened. And Pisco's rationale is, because Trump said it wasn't a big deal, that's all that matters, so it was okay for Biden to make fun of him. Now, consider the irony of this. Pisco's a person who literally says, almost every time we look at Trump's exact words, he says, no. We can't just look at those exact words. We know what his intent was. So when Trump says peaceful, we know he actually meant be violence. When Trump doesn't literally say quid pro quo, we know he literally meant quid pro quo. But this one time, just this one time, where we could see the video footage of the riot that was occurring and the violence and the Molotov cocktails, and we could see the doctor reports of the Secret Service agents and whatever that were injured and law enforcement that was injured. We could see it with our own eyes. Pisco says, I don't believe it. I only believe Trump's words. Trump said it wasn't a big deal, therefore it wasn't a big deal, so it's okay to make fun of him. That's his argument. Again, Trump says, go march and be peaceful. That's proof that Trump engaged in an insurrection. Violent lefties try to get in and murder Donald Trump with lethal weapons. Joe Biden makes fun of Trump for it. Hey, no problem there. I don't see anything wrong with that. The irony is, remember, he started it off, like, Akbar nails it. He started off was like, Rob's not going to be able to find any prominent people that did this, so I'm going to needle him about, whatever, some randos on Twitter. Then once I'm like, how about Joe Biden? He's like, he didn't use the exact term bunker boy, and, Trump said it wasn't a big deal, so it's okay. It's okay that, that it's no big deal. So what? People made fun of Trump. Trump said it wasn't a big deal. No big deal. Now it doesn't matter. He wanted to see a prominent person. I got the most prominent. The president. Nah, it doesn't count. Doesn't count. Let's just ask a question. Do you think if Trump would have came out with a statement, say, 2 days after January 6th, when AOC was saying she had PTSD, and he was like, hey, AOC, why don't you crawl back under that desk there, you little coward? Keep your mouth shut. Do you think that the Colorado court would have used that as evidence that Trump engaged in an insurrection? Of course they would have. Of course. Just like when I asked previously, if the riots that burned down, under Pisco's definition, the riots that burnt down the Minneapolis police precinct, if that was an insurrection, and Kamala Harris pushed a bail fund the day after that, isn't that an evidence that she engaged in insurrection? Oh, no, says Pisco. Nope, not at all. That's not evidence she engaged in an insurrection. I said, if Trump would have pushed a bail fund for January 6 people, would you have claimed that it was evidence of an insurrection? Of course they would have. Of course they would have. Because Trump said, the day after, Trump was like, there were great people, patriots that were there. And they say that's proof. So if he would have went further and offered pardons or a bail fund for the prisoners, you're damn right they would have said it was evidence. That's right, Roman. I just thought that was a fun little topic. Keeps taking L's. The left just keep taking bigger and bigger L's. And again, I go back to, and I hate to do this, I'll play the clip again. To me, the seminal moment, I think of things differently. Oftentimes, because understand, my primary reason for doing this is my own entertainment value. And I love debating. And oftentimes the meta of how the debate's going becomes more interesting to me than the topic we're talking about. And so, if I'm talking to a lawyer on some very specific legal shit, like specific definitions and things like that, understand, I'm familiar enough to know how this goes. In policy debate, one of the arguments you had a lot was called topicality. You see, one team has to be affirmative and the other team negative. And then you switch. Half the rounds you're affirmative, half the rounds you're negative. When you're affirmative, you have to have a plan that defends the resolution. And the resolution in policy debate's always pretty lengthy. It's not just like, we should plant more corn. It'll be something like this. Resolved, the United States federal government should substantially reduce subsidies in one of the 5 following areas. Corn, sorghum, wheat, things like that. Then your plan, if you're affirmative, the rules state that you have to have a plan that defends that resolution. Let's say the topic is that you have to substantially reduce subsidies, and I stand up and say, our plan is to fly back to the moon. And here's a ton of good reasons why we should go back to the moon. Our opponents could say, sure, that sounds great, but that's not the topic. And so you lose. You were unable to defend the topic, so you lose. It is the job of the affirmative to affirm the topic. You could make the best arguments in the world, but if they don't affirm the topic, you lose. Okay, you might say that makes sense. Now, in reality, a lot of lefties don't give a shit about that. They'll just say, you trying to make us affirm the topic is racism. Stupid. Anyways. But it's not always that clear cut, right? So again, let's go back. United States federal government, you should substantially reduce subsidies in one of the following areas. So the team stands up and says, our plan is to reduce 5% of corn subsidies. Are they defending the resolution? You might say, well, yeah. It said you had to eliminate some corn subsidies. That's defending the resolution. Yeah, but it didn't just say that, did it? It said you had to substantially reduce. Is 5% substantially? You tell me. I'll ask the audience. Is a 5% reduction in something a substantial reduction? Just a yes or no. If I'm your boss and I say you need to substantially reduce spending and you reduce it by 5%, Was that a substantial reduction or not? We got one for no. We got one for yeah. You're already illustrating my point. Depends on context. No. Right. Well, it depends on how you define substantial. For example, is $20 a substantial amount of money? Probably not. But what if you're homeless? Probably. Is a 5% reduction? Well, if the 5... It depends. I've read definitions that substantial is a specific percentage reduction, like 20%. I've read that it just means of value. Substantial means of value, of material value. And so what happens is, I would stand up and say, you didn't defend the resolution because my definition of substantial says it has to be at least 20%. And they would counter that by saying, no, we did defend the resolution because my definition of substantial says of material value. And 5% meets that, of material value. Then we argue back and forth about which definition should be preferred. That's similar to how a lot of legal arguments go. Define the term insurrection. Well, the problem is, there's many different definitions of the term insurrection. And so if you're hyper-specifically looking to see, does this one incident meet this definition, which definition you choose is going to matter. So you have to argue why the definition you're choosing is the best definition to use. So I'm familiar with how this sort of strategy goes. And the truth is, most of the time, there's not a clear-cut answer. There's not. Most of the time, a reasonable person could watch and say, I think both sides are making decent points on what the term insurrection means, or what the term substantial means, or what the term engaged in, as in engaged in an insurrection, what it means. So then, the overarching point I would ask an audience then is, now all of a sudden, the credibility of the people arguing matters. If you could say, I can't really decide, both sides make compelling, defensible arguments. Now, your bias is going to influence you one way or the other, most likely. But what if you knew that one of the people were intentionally a bad faith hack? That no matter what, they would never be willing to concede or accept anything that would make their position look worse. Now, we've already argued, just take the definition of the term insurrection, that a reasonable person could say there could be multiple definitions and both sides could have a point. And in that situation, it's going to be hard to say, well, I'm trying to judge the credibility of the people making this argument. But what if it's not hard? What if you could see the same two people arguing in a situation that's 100% clear-cut? And you could see one of them is completely willing to deny reality. My computer will probably crash here. That's why, to me, the Jamal Bowman debate, specifically with Pisco, is so important. Because it's not just about Pisco, it's illustrative of the left. When you get into complicated minutiae like definition of the term insurrection, definition of the term engaged with, what does the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, what's it really saying? The average person might look at that and say, okay, interesting. I hear arguments on both sides. But what if you knew that one side of that debate hates Donald Trump so much and is so willing to defend any institution that goes after him in any way whatsoever that they will completely lie and talk out their ass? I'll ask you again, since you're trying to weasel out of it. I said, do you still defend your initial position? I don't give a shit about the degrees of confidence. Please, let me finish. Let me finish. Your initial position was that it's more likely
And you said, well, degrees of confidence and blah, 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 blah. Whatever. At the end of the day, brass tacks, you think it's more likely he pulled that alarm to get out of the building than he did to cause the delay. And I said, now that we see the video, do you stand by that? You said yes.
I do, yes.
Yeah, that's how everyone knows that you're a bad faith piece of shit.
Now, let's examine the bad faith aspect to it.
I have no interest.
Hang on, Rob, you got to.
Now, I could play the rest out, but that's the point. And you might be saying, well, what's he talking about? He's saying that it's more likely that Jamal Bowman tried to pull a fire alarm to get out of door, which was an asinine position in the first place. But now that we have this video, I'll just ask you directly. Does this look like a man who just pulled a fire alarm to try to exit a door? Pulls down the signs, pulls the fire alarm, doesn't even attempt to go to the door. You be the judge. All the legalese, all the lawyering, talking about specific definitions of this word and that word, hours upon hours of debate I've had with him about specific sections of the Constitution, definitions of specific words, the context of specific emails, telephone calls, official documents of the United States government. Does that look like a guy? Now, Pisco's seen this video. He sees it. Let's watch again. The left's seen this video. The Democrats have seen this video. And they're like, yep, he was trying to get out the door. Yep, look, pulls down the sign, pulls the alarm, doesn't even try to get out the door. Now, when you hear Pisco say, well, actually, when Trump says be peaceful, what he really means is be violent. Actually, when Trump said the protesters were good people on January 6th, that was him engaging in an insurrection. But when Joe Biden made fun of Trump after people tried to get into the White House and kill him, that's not proof of that. He later said in this debate, when Jamal Bowman, he admits that it's impossible, it would be a lie for Bowman to claim that he didn't think the alarm would go off when he pulled it. But that's what Bowman told police. So then the question you have for Pisco is, okay, do you think that lying to police is a crime? Yep. And did you agree when Trump-connected people lied to police they should have been in charge? Yep. And did you agree George Papadopoulos should have been charged for lying to law enforcement? Absolutely. And do you agree Mike Flynn should have been charged for lying to law enforcement? Yes, I do. Okay, well, Jamal Bowman lied to law enforcement. They asked him specifically, did you intend for the alarm to go off? He said no. That's a lie. Pisco goes, well, see, I don't think he meant he didn't intend for the alarm to go off. I think what he meant was he didn't intend for the global alarm system to go off, but he did intend for the local one. The exact words that Bowman said, even though they are a lie, the exact words, we shouldn't judge it as a lie because I feel in his mind his intent was something different. And I even said at that portion of the debate, I said, okay, now keep that energy, because now we're going to talk about Trump and January 6th. Are you going to do the same thing? Or are you going to say, forget what his specific words were. Let's look at it with the most charitable interpretation of what his intent could be. No, instead it's the exact opposite. It's forget what his words were. He said be peaceful. And instead let's look at it with the least charitable. Oh, when he says be peaceful, that's a dog whistle to violence. Now, everyone, is exacerbated. Why are you bringing up this Bowman thing? What's the point? It's not that big of a deal. I disagree. It's a big deal on its own merits because it shows the double standard of law enforcement when it comes to disrupting an official proceeding, which we're told is something that many of the January 6 people needed to be charged with. But can you see the people that we argue with? Can you see who they are? Computer's going to overheat here. And there was another story I was going to get to tonight, but I'm running out of time here, and that was Glenn Beck's outfit put out to show that one of the Capital City police officers that was instrumental in charging the Oath Keepers that started to get 10 years in prison committed perjury. He said, I saw the Oath Keepers hurling racial slurs and verbally harassing this other officer. And the video evidence proves he wasn't even in the area when this alleged confrontation occurred. But the defense never got that video. That's clear perjury, a clear case of perjury. The timestamps don't lie. Guy says, I saw them 3 or 4 times have this interaction, and the videotape shows he never saw it once. That's clear-cut perjury. That's not, oh, I misremembered. Yeah, Roman, that's probably the best argument. Here's the truth with January 6th. First off, I don't deny that Capital City Police Chief Stephen Sund seems like a decent man, and I think that he would be overly cautious. And so if he hears, imagine that he gets intel that's like, hey, we were watching the Groypers, we were watching Nick Fuentes' stream, and they said January 6th they're going to come and start some shit and they're going to overthrow the government. Now, me and you would know, like, yeah, right, the Groypers are going to overthrow the government, sure, whatever. It's just shit talking online, right? But Stephen Sund's probably the type of dude that would be like, all right, let's get prepared. Let's make sure we have 1,000 people at this entrance, 1,000 people here. We're going to swear in the guard. We're going to have barricades set up. That sounds like the type of dude he was. So I don't think that he's the type of guy that's like, bad faith, like calling it an insurrection when he didn't think it was one. However, when you look at what actually happened, it clearly wasn't an insurrection. It's clearly being blown out of proportion for political gain. That's clearly what's happening. And so no, I haven't heard of them, Tom. The easiest way to prove that they know they're full of shit is, how can you be the Sergeant-at-Arms, Robert Irving, under Nancy Pelosi, or Lieutenant General Paeta, and sitting there and going, this is an insurrection. They're going to try to kill congresspeople. That's their position. They're not saying, it's a riot, got out of control. No big deal. They're saying, oh my God, I knew. It was terrible. It was such a sad day. I was emotional. They're going to kill. They might get in there and overthrow the government. And then someone says, can you give us the National Guard then? And they say, nah, optics. Sorry. I guess they're just going to have to kill Mike Pence. That's worth it rather than having the optics of stopping them. Okay, thanks, Tom. I'll check it out. Because they know it wasn't an insurrection. They know it. But when they're like, oh my God, worst day ever, worse than 9/11. Okay, then why didn't you deploy the guard? Well, they can't say the truth, which is, we wanted it to get out of control. Or, it was just a riot. No one thought that they were going to go in and overthrow the government. How do you pronounce his last name? Gouveia? Robert Gouveia, is that it? But yeah, interesting shit. Optics. And they don't have an answer for it. Now, all they could do is run out the clock. And I talked about this last night. It becomes frustrating, right? The biggest threat we have that entrenches corruption, it's not the Democratic Party. It's the Republican Party. Think of it from a normie perspective. Let me show you how you could beat me in a debate anytime we're talking about corruption to a decent portion of normies. Say 20% of them. Ready? I'll turn my hat backwards when I'm the lefty arguing against me, right? So I'll say, Hunter Biden obviously illegally lobbied. Obviously. He was working for corrupt companies like Burisma that the U.S. State Department was saying was corrupt. He was getting money in a field, $70,000, if not more, a month in a field that he had no knowledge of. He did not register as a foreign lobbyist. We know that he was involved in emails and phone calls with not just his dad, but other officials in the United States. We have emails specifically ordering him to reach out to officials in the United States to lobby on behalf. And we see the precedent's been set with the Mueller report that you charge people if they fail to register as a foreign lobbyist and they're registering as foreign lobbyists. It's clear cut. Response. Why didn't Bill Barr arrest him? Why didn't Trump's people arrest him? That's it. That's the argument. Jamal Bowman clearly lied to police when he said he didn't intend for that alarm to go off. He clearly wasn't pulling that alarm to get out the doors. The video shows it. Then why didn't Republicans charge him? You see? That's it. And that's persuasive to a large... Yeah, makes sense. Republicans hate Democrats, so if Democrats did something bad, clearly Republicans would throw the book at them. Democrats hate Republicans, and so when Republicans do something bad, we could see that the Democrats throw the book at them. So therefore, the inverse would be true. But it's not true. Because it's not just about Republican versus Democrat. It's about establishment versus people that are seen as outside of it. So a persuasive argument to them, if I talk about FBI corruption, is this. James Comey and Chris Wray are lifelong Republicans. Donald Trump appointed them. So there can't be corruption. Why would they be corrupt against Trump? And that's it. There are normies that are like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you have to be like, well, listen, it's not that simple. Of course, they never do this. Do I have a Twitter dude? I have Twitter. I don't have a dude that runs it. That's literally how simple it is. And then you'll have to be like, well, listen, it's because it's not just about Republicans versus Democrats. Oh, so it's a conspiracy. Here we go. It's a conspiracy. How many people? What, 50,000 people involved in this conspiracy? Every single Republican? Oh, it's all just, oh, here's Rob. He doesn't have a smoking gun. Everything's a conspiracy. All we know is if there was really dirt there, then the FBI that are Republicans would have went after it. And they didn't, and therefore that shows there's no dirt. And we know that if Jamal Bowman did something and the Republicans don't like Bowman, they would have went after him. He didn't, so that proves there's no dirt. And we know that the Inspector General, when he looked at this, he would have recommended crimes if there were crimes, recommended charges, and he didn't, so that proves there was nothing there. And Rob just thinks that it's a big conspiracy with 50,000 people that are involved in it. That's it. That's the entire debate for a large swath of normies. Certainly anyone that already has a bias towards that side of the argument is going to say, you crushed it. Great job, Destiny. Destiny makes this fantastic argument. You ready for this one? If I could show an example of a whistleblower from the FBI ever speaking up to out some of their corruption, like the whistleblower that spoke up to the Southern District of New York when James Comey's FBI was covering up Anthony Weiner's laptop that had emails from Hillary on it, then that proves that there could never, ever, ever be another instance of an FBI cover-up because de facto there would be a whistleblower that would out it. You understand that? If a whistleblower talked about corruption once, then no other corruption could ever exist because a whistleblower would have talked about it. Got it? That's the sort of shit arguments that they make. Yeah, my Twitter is just robnoerr. You know, it would be nice to have Republicans that actually fought back. Wouldn't that be nice? Here's an example from this week. Hunter Biden clearly was in contempt. He was subpoenaed to appear, to answer questions. He not only did not comply with the subpoena, he intentionally showed up outside where he was asked to comply, put on a press conference. Then the press secretary said that his father was aware of the stunt. Meaning Joe Biden was aware that his son was about to commit a crime by violating a subpoena. Now, when Steve Bannon didn't comply with the subpoena, they held him in contempt and they sent him to jail. So the next step was they had a contempt hearing to see whether or not the committee was going to hold Hunter Biden in contempt. Hunter Biden again makes a mockery of it by showing up, sitting in the gallery, and making a mockery of the whole process, thumbing his nose at them. Fuck you, I'm above the law. What you gonna do about it? And so they decide they're going to hold him in contempt. Then they're going to have the next step, which is the House of Representatives as whole gets to vote on the contempt resolution. Hunter Biden says, okay, I've decided now, if you meet certain criteria, I'll come for the subpoena now. And what do Republicans do? Here's what they should have done. That's fine. We could set up a separate subpoena that you could comply with. You are still in contempt of the first subpoena, and we will be holding you in contempt and recommending that you go to jail as you all done of Steve Bannon. But instead, what did Republicans do? Okay, we look forward to hearing your testimony. We'll withdraw the contempt charges. That's the Republicans, ladies and gentlemen. Hunter could show up next time shit-faced. They'd swear him in and be like, fuck you, I'm not swearing in. Fuck you, I'm not answering anything. Lick my ass. Fuck off. And they'd be like, we're holding you in contempt, mister. That's it. Strongly worded letters are coming your direction right now, buddy. Oh, boy, Buster. And the Democrats would be like, hey, this is totally cool. This is a sham. Yay, Hunter Biden's based. He did it. He's not going to comply with this stupid shit. Yay, Hunter's the man. And then they'd vote to hold him in contempt, and Hunter would show up again and make a mockery of him. And they'd say, that's it, Buster. This time we're for real. And then the day before they actually vote on the contempt, he'd be like, I'm sorry, I'll come next week. And they'd go, oh, thank you, Mr. Hunter. That's so generous of you. Yeah, let's rip up that contempt charge again. You're so generous. Mike, what a great guy. He's going to come again. Woo, man, this guy's great. Thanks so much, Hunter. What a classy guy. That's the fucking Republicans. There's Jim Jordan. There's Comer's big impeachment panel. There you go. I wonder if they'll ever hold anyone accountable. And then when I talk about the obvious crimes of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and I'm debating someone on the left, they go, why didn't the Republicans on the impeachment panel recommend any charges? End of debate. Well, because they're corrupt. They were never serious. Oh, so it's a big conspiracy. Here we go. It's a big conspiracy. That's it. It's really that simple. Imagine how easy it would be to debate these issues on the left. Did the FBI say there was any criminality there? Oh, you're accusing the FBI of being corrupt, right? Yeah, that's what I'm accusing. And the FBI looked into whether or not they were corrupt, right? Well, right, but I hardly... And did the FBI say they were corrupt? Well, no, the FBI said that they themselves weren't corrupt when they investigated. Right, so then there's no evidence that they were corrupt. Well, right, because the FBI was the group that would have the evidence. Now, we have all this circumstantial evidence, and we do have literal evidence that we can see from outside. Right, but the FBI saw that evidence and decided not to say they were corrupt. Right, I guess that's true. Right, so then there's no corruption. That's it. If I was a lefty, dude, I'm a good debater as a writer. If I was a bad faith sack of shit lefty, do you know how bad I could tear people up? You know how much I could argue their position rhetorically more effective than them? Now again, I think normies are waking up, but there's still a group of them that'll be like, makes sense to me. If the Democrats are being corrupt, Republicans would hold them in check. If Republicans are being corrupt, Democrats will hold them in check. But that's not the battle. Yeah, total wars, that's actually a solid point. It's something I talked about the other day, right? There's some of the DeSantis people that I think go too far. If you were to ask me, who do you think handled COVID lockdowns better, Trump or DeSantis? Unquestionably, DeSantis handled it better. And I think it's ridiculous that Trump's never answered. I was criticizing Trump in real time while he was embracing lockdowns. But if you're Thomas Massie, a representative that I like, and you give a speech endorsing DeSantis and you say, Trump trampled on our Constitution by defending things like lockdowns, and that makes him disqualified to be president again. In other words, if you violate the principles of the Constitution by embracing things like lockdowns, you are disqualified. Well, DeSantis did that. He did. DeSantis locked down. He did it less than Trump. He ended it quicker than Trump would have liked, but he still did it. So is it disqualifying? And then I'm assuming Massey's answer would be something like this. Well, he wasn't the president, and okay, he did it, but he realized, people were scrambling at the beginning. They didn't know. So you can forgive that. But once he realized it was wrong, he changed. Right, but that's not what your position was. Your position is it's disqualifying if you've trampled on the Constitution. He clearly did. That's disqualifying. Right, and that's another argument. Total war. Trump, although recommended lockdowns and criticized people that didn't, he never actually implemented a lockdown. DeSantis did. I still think DeSantis did better in the overall scheme, don't get me wrong. But if I'm arguing from the position of, okay, if it's disqualifying, then how isn't DeSantis disqualified? Well, it turns out that's not their argument. Their argument's, it's a very serious thing to violate these sort of constitutional principles, which I totally agree with. And yeah, it's lamentable that DeSantis did as well. But DeSantis recognized his error earlier, and he apologized for it. And that makes him preferable to Donald Trump. And that's a fair argument. But that's different than the hyperbolic, you're disqualified if you did this. That's a different argument. See you, Roman. Have fun at your art lesson, man. You know, and I sort of, not to throw him under the bus because I like him, but like John Burke and me, one of the last spaces we did, while we're doing the space, it's when they held the vote to kick George Santos out of Congress. And he's like, what do you think about that? It like literally happened live while we were doing our space. And I was like, oh, this is bullshit. He hasn't been convicted of a crime. Republicans are spineless. They always cave in when it's people on their side, but they won't kick people out of Congress that have done heinous shit that are on the other side. And the Democrats will never hold their own people accountable like this. And John's take was different. John's take was George Santos is accused of some very serious campaign finance crimes, and we have to be more principled than the left. And so we get into a generic discussion of, but if they don't have principles and constantly attack you, and you do abide by principles, you'll lose. But he still says, nope, you got to have the principles. And I said, but he wasn't even convicted. Doesn't matter. And I said, are you aware of how archaic, like, campaign finance laws are? Like, I'll tell you a story. I was going to run for Congress in 2014 as a libertarian. And so there was the Libertarian Party nationally, you know, obviously thin, but they helped me out as best they could. They did some emails back and forth with me, tried to put me in contact with people. And I was not going to have a campaign. It was just going to be myself, and I was refusing to take donations. And I basically was only going to spend my own money and small amounts of it on my campaign. Maybe make a couple yard signs. Now, I knew the chances of me winning were slim to none, but I wanted to run. It's something I wanted to do. And I talked to this lawyer that the Libertarians hooked me up with, and they said, you have to start like a, I don't know what the word, like a committee. And it has to elect officers, a president, a vice president, a secretary, a treasurer, that's going to handle your finances for your campaign. I said, well, I'm not really having finance for the campaign. They're like, yeah, but you still have to do it. Even if you nominate yourself to all of those positions, you have to have those positions filled. And then they were like, and you also have to keep track of your financial statements and fill out these financial statement paperwork like once a month and then turn it in to make sure that you're not violating campaign finance laws. And I said, but I'm not spending any money. And this is what they told me. They said, it doesn't matter. Because if you don't fill out this paperwork and you start to get enough signatures to get on the ballot, they will take you to court, even if you didn't spend any money. They're not going to throw you in jail, but they'll drag out the court case until after the election. So you have to fill it out. And then here I am, Joe Schmo, that's not a lawyer, looking at this shit like, what the fuck? I could have easily stumbled into some sort of violation completely unintentionally. So could national politicians. But if your argument is, and this was John Burke's argument, on principle, if someone violates a campaign law like that, they are disqualified. They can no longer hold office. No matter the amount of money, was his stance. Doesn't matter. Oh, it was only $20. Does not matter. On principle. That's why George Santos needs to go. Even without a trial, he's got to go. I said, okay. Let me ask you a question. Let's say that Ron DeSantis takes his wife out to Applebee's tomorrow, and he uses the wrong card, and he ends up using the campaign finance card, and he doesn't catch it. And then 6 months later from now, they catch it. That's campaign finance law. Only $50. Still, campaign finance violation. And at that point, we'll say DeSantis wins and he's president. Does he have to step down? On principle, right? The amount doesn't matter. Well, you can't hold office because we, on principle, can't defend. Thank you so much, McLinebacker. I appreciate the sub. And he was like, well, I'd have to think about it, but yeah, I guess probably you'd have to step down. Bullshit. Bullshit. There's a lot of valid criticisms to make of Trump. I've made them before most of the DeSantis people did. I made them while Trump was in office. But the idea, well, because of his stance on Second Amendment, that's disqualifying. Because of his stance on lockdowns, that's disqualifying. That's fine if that's your personal preference, but don't act like you don't support an awful lot of people that have taken similar actions. You don't say they're disqualified. Just like lockdowns with DeSantis. So just say the truth. You don't like Trump. You hate him. That's fine. There's reasons to hate Trump. There's reasons to not want him. Totally get it. But the hyperbolic, like, nope, these things are lines in the sand. How could you call yourself a conservative and vote for Donald Trump? He's anti-Second Amendment. He embraced lockdowns, for God's sakes. Cool. How could you call yourself a conservative and vote for Ron DeSantis? Well, when he embraced lockdowns, it was different because... Yeah, right. Good job, Lord. Your shift ends in 2 hours. I will not be streaming for 2 more hours. I'm going to be wrapping her up here. So, when will I be streaming again? I don't know. Maybe tomorrow evening at some point. When I'm home, I should be home tomorrow. Look for me to do some streams at like 11 in the afternoon. Or I guess 11 in the morning, not in the afternoon. By definition, 11 can't be afternoon. Unless it's 11 p.m., but then it's 11 in the evening. I need some sleep. Let's find someone to raid on Twitch. Let's raid EOD. He's cool. I'll get you next time, CTV. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate all of you. All of you for financial support. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Those that can't support financially, I get it. I'm broke as a joke half the time, too. Hope you enjoy the content. I'll keep you posted when I have some more big shows coming up. I'm working with some people. I'm going to try to get on some bigger shows and stuff like that, so I'll make sure people know. And I'm going to try to keep doing the daily video stuff and get back in the swing of that and be streaming when at all possible. So thanks so much. You guys make the show great. Hear from you soon. As always, have a good one. Enjoy this raid of VOD.